Good evening. Welcome to the City of Opa-locka Regular Commission meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Davis,
Here.
Commissioner Taylor,
Here.
Mayor Pygott.
I'm here. Commissioner Taylor, would you lead us in invocation?
God, we thank you for bringing us together one more time in your name, God. And before we ask you for anything, God, we thank you for everything. And God, we thank you for the healing of our fellow comrade and Commissioner Burke. We ask you to heal his body from the crown of his head to the soles of his feet. And we ask for total restoration for him. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance.
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So today we have a presentation by City of Opa-locka Human Resources honoring our class of 2020 graduates.
Good evening, everyone. Kiera Ward, Human Resources Director for the great city of Opa-locka. It gives me great honor to present to you our Team Opa-locka Spotlight. Team Opa-locka Spotlight is an initiative where the Human Resources Department, in addition to the City Manager's Office, honors greatness within our team. As parents, we realize that our children's accomplishments are worth celebrating and definitely something to be proud of. I like to refer to our employees' children as our Team Opa-locka Minis. Many of these Team Opa-locka Minis are no stranger to the team. We have had the honor of meeting them at city events, working with them during this Take Your Child to Work Day program through the school system, and even celebrating their lives at work before they're even born. This past year was full of challenges. Some students attended school virtually, and others had to adapt to social distancing, masking requirements, and even the inconvenience of mandatory quarantines while attending school. So today we honor our Team Opa-locka Minis graduates and acknowledge their achievements during a not so normal school year. We actually extended an invitation to all of our graduates to attend this meeting tonight to be recognized. Some of them were unable to make it, but I have presented a slideshow that I would like to present tonight to honor those who are unable to attend. Let's introduce our 2021 graduates. Nelson, can you make it larger? One moment. There we go. Thank you, Nelson. Okay, the class of 2021 graduates. Our kindergarten graduates. First, we have the adorable Dream Jenkins. She is the daughter of our Assistant Chief, Nakia Jenkins, from the police department, and she is graduating from kindergarten at the Dade Christian School Kindergarten. Would you like to accept the award for the Dream, please? You're welcome. Congratulations. Next, Nelson. We have Kamora Starks. She is the daughter of Tequila Brown, also a member of our police department. She is graduating from kindergarten at Miami Norland Elementary School. Our 5th grade graduates. My princess, Deani Starks, she is graduating from the 5th grade at Rainbow Park Elementary. This is my unofficial child. The city clerk and I had a child at the same hospital on the same day 11 years ago. So we have Corey Davis, who is also graduating from the 5th grade at Miami Lakes K-8 Center. Is he here? Jonah, did he come? He's not here? Oh, okay. We'll see if he comes before the end of the presentation. We have Alyssa Jackson, the student of Kimberly Tarver, she works in our finance department. She is graduating from the 5th grade from Dr. Henry Mack West Little River K through 8 Center. 12th grade graduates. Anthony Rosero is the son of one of our police officers, Officer Hero Rosero. He is graduating from Jose Marti Mass Academy. Shadarian Baker is the daughter of Sakina Hollis in our finance department. She is graduating from Miami Northwestern Senior High School. We have Melissa Guante, the daughter of our police officer, Johnny Guante. She graduated from Somerset Academy, 12th grade. And we also have here Mr. Alex Steele, the son of our Sergeant Michael Steele, the police department. He graduated from West Broward High School, 12th grade. If you would come and receive your for you as well. And our city manager gave a monetary gift to our 12th grade graduates. There they are. Okay, so let me put the sash on first. Here's your card. And your certificate. Thank you so much. Congratulations. Okay, and we do have one college graduate, the son of Mr. Owen Carney of our Public Works Department. Mr. Owen Carney graduated from the University of Miami. Congratulations to him as well. Thank you so much. And if you would like to take a picture with Sergeant Steele's son, because he did come out for us, that would be great.
Let's give another round of applause for all of our graduates and also their parents. Much respect for everyone as we develop our children to be the next generation of leaders. I want to give my respects and honor to all those involved in this ceremony, and also to the parents that have been instilling their kids and growing them up to where they are today. So much respect. Congratulations. All right, now let's move on to the business. All right, moving on to the approval of consent agenda. Any pulls, deletions, or deferrals? All right, I would like to pull item 1 and 3.
Mr. Mayor,
Hmm.
I would like to pull number 9.
All right. Any other pulls, deletions, or deferrals? All right, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move it. Second.
Moved by Commissioner Davis. Second by Commissioner Teller. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Davis?
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor?
Yes.
Mayor Pygott?
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Move it.
Moved by Commissioner Teller.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Davis. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Taylor?
Yes.
Commissioner Davis?
Yes.
Mayor Pygott?
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0.
Do I have a motion to approve the regular commission meeting minutes for June 23rd, 2021?
Move it.
Moved by Commissioner Taylor.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Davis. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Davis?
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor?
Yes.
Mayor Pygott?
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0.
Do I have a motion to approve the special commission meeting minutes for July 9th, 2021?
Move it.
Moved by Commissioner Taylor.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Davis. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Davis?
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Williams?
Yes.
Mayor Pygott?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Do you have any reports from District 1 or 2?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right, moving on to our public presentation. We have Donna Grace from EAC Consulting. Donna Grace, you see you online. You have the ability to unmute your mic and turn on and do your presentation. Ms. Grace. Is there anyone from EAC Consulting? We hear some tapping from Michael. I'm unable to pronounce the last name, Adifi.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Madam Vice Mayor. Good evening, Commissioners. We're having some technical, I'm having technical difficulties with the video. I think my voice is activated, but the video is not. We're getting a response back saying that the host is not allowing for video presentation, so.
I believe you can do it now.
Awesome, yes, I'm on now.
All right, could you hold for one moment? Are we able to turn the speakers down inside because we can barely hear them?
I'm going to increase the volume on mine, so.
We hear you loud and clear. It's just, it's unclear in the auditorium because of the loudness of the speakers.
Okay, my audio is working now. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I apologize for that. Thank you for having us here. Mayor Paget, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Donna Grace, and I am a Senior Project Manager with EAC Consulting. We've been working for the city since 2013 on your planning reports that back then were for your infrastructure improvements. And now we're working for the city of Opa-locka to develop your stormwater master plan. I'd like to go through the timeline for these stormwater infrastructure improvements. We're at the stage, yes, sir?
Could you share your screen because I can't see your screen?
Okay. Let me see which screen is shared. Which screen is shared? Is it the proper screen?
It's good now.
Okay. So we're at the stage for the developing the stormwater master plan. And I just wanted to point out that from this project will be identified, and that will move into development of design and construction documents. From there, it will go into, these projects will go into construction and then operations and maintenance of the stormwater system. So through this presentation, we think that there may be these are the top 5 frequently asked questions. What does the acronym COSWMP mean? Simply, it's the City of Opa-locka Stormwater Master Plan that you'll see through this presentation and subsequently in some of our submittals. What is the purpose of the Stormwater Master Plan? It's a planning level document that we are using to assess the current conditions of the drainage system in the city, and it will identify and prioritize areas where your drainage systems are deficient. The deficiencies will be documented and assigned a level of severity. Ultimately, we'll be identifying drainage improvement projects with CIP level cost estimates for construction and an implementation plan to undertake these improvements. Third question, frequently asked question, is what is considered flooding? Well, typically flooding is not what you would think of as just standing water on roadway pavements. Instead, when a drainage system cannot meet the identified or the intended level of service for flood protection, that is what is considered flooding. And what is the flood protection level of service? The flood protection level of service is now when the drainage system can move the water out of your roadways after a certain rainfall event. What is the city's responsibility for citywide stormwater management? Well, the city is responsible for all your city-owned roads, and you're not responsible for maintenance of private properties, which includes residential, commercial, and industrial areas, excuse me. I'm going to move this presentation over to Mike for the rest of this presentation. Mike.
Thank you very much, Donna. Once again, Mr. Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, Commissioners, it is an honor and a privilege to come before you this evening to present on this very important initiative that the city is embarking on. As Donna rightly alluded to, we've had the opportunity to work with the city over the past 6-7 years, just looking at some of your infrastructure and figuring out the best way to get your infrastructure to the level of service that is acceptable and in place for your residents to be able to derive a benefit from. This is very personal for me. I tell folks that I used to be a resident in the city of Opa-locka. So I know Opa-locka really well. And getting an opportunity as an engineer to come back in and work to resolve and be a part of resolving issues and concerns of residents is number one on my mind now. And as a prior resident, I think it's a great opportunity to bring some of the knowledge that I have working with other cities and municipalities and bringing it back to Opa-locka, making things happen. Donna rightly pointed out the frequently asked questions. Those are questions that we typically get from a number of our residents and our clients when it comes to stormwater master planning. There are questions that help set the table. There are questions that set the expectations, and there are questions that bring some clarity and transparency to the process. So from our end as your consultant and your end as our client, and the residents as our clients, there is a clear understanding of the end game, so to speak, as it relates to the master planning process. Donna also brought up a slide that looked at the overall scheme of improvements from the master plan component all the way to the operations and maintenance of your systems. So I wanted to make it clear that what the master plan does is it puts in place a plan for what you need to do with your infrastructure to get them designed, ultimately put into construction, and then maintained by city staff. So as far as the current status and future milestones expected on this project, we started the project in December last year. We got our notice to proceed. However, we got into a little bit of a hiccup because we were relying on a lot of data from Miami-Dade County. So we had a 4-month delay from the county because they were updating the information that we needed. And thanks to the efforts of the city manager and the director of the public works, they came through and intervened, and Durham was able to release the information to us as soon as they saw the letters from both the manager and the public works director. So far, we've gone through phase 1 and phase 2. The bulk of our presentation today will be focused on phase 1 and phase 2 of this project. The good news is that phase 1 and phase 2 really represents the bulk of the time that it takes to get the master plan done. We're at the point now when we can get into phase 3 and phase 4 and wrap up this whole process before the end of the 4th quarter of this year. So phase 1 essentially is your data collection, verification, looking at some of the records that you have on file, discussing with stakeholders. In this case, we've been having close discussions with public works staff just to kind of get an understanding. And then with the knowledge of some of our staff, we put that together to get a good understanding of what the conditions are within the city's watershed. And then phase 2 is when we actually go in and process the data, develop a model for the city that represents the conditions in the city. And then we do test runs with a model to make sure that the model actually replicates or provides to us information as it is today when you have a rainfall in the city. And then through a verified model process, we go in and identify your problem areas and then develop a ranking criteria for those problem areas. Thus far, we've hit 4 of our milestones. We have 4 deliverables completed. The tech memo for the first task was completed a while back. The tech memo for the second and the third tasks were also completed and submitted. And the tech memo for the 4th task is also completed as well. So we're at the point now where we can now move to the 3rd phase of this project. And then subsequent to that, we would wrap up the project with 2 more meetings before you. The first meeting we're going to have in the future, we'll be looking at some of the specific projects that we have to take on to get some of the items or the issues that have been identified in the process resolved. And then the last meeting will be one that comes before you to approve a CIP, a future CIP program for public works and for the city to implement the improvements that are identified in the master plan. Next slide. Public participation is key in this project. This is a process where master planning for us as engineers at EAC is a two-way street. As much of the expertise that we think we have, it's never enough. So hearing back from the public, from the residents, is critical to the success of the process. And to get that done, we're coming up with a process or a system of 3 ways to connect to this project. Right now, online on the city's website, we have the flooding complaint form. This is a form that can be filled out online by residents to report any flooding complaints that they have. Once the complaints are filled out and submitted, we get a copy of it through the Public Works Department. We also have an online survey that is supposed to be posted on your website it's a short survey, but it's an inquiry of your residents as it relates to what their understanding is of what is going on in the city in relation to flooding. Very similar to the flooding complaint, but it goes beyond that because it also looks at other items that are pertinent to the master planning process. And then the third platform that we have is a weekly update platform where we're going in and we're updating any asked questions. So in addition to the top 5 questions that Donna mentioned earlier, there are other questions that are on that platform. We are anticipating more questions, and we think some of the questions we get today would also be added to it. So in essence, it will be a living platform that will be updated regularly and will provide the responses to comments, concerns, questions, items requiring clarification from residents as it relates to the process and what the master planning initiative is hoping to get. Next slide. So the data collection, this slide just identifies the various agencies we reached out to. Some of those agencies are local agencies. As you can see, some are statewide agencies. We even reached out to the Army Corps of Engineers, not because the Army Corps has any jurisdiction over the city, but we just wanted to make sure that every data that we could collect that was pertinent for the process, we picked it up. We didn't want to leave any stone unturned. The master planning process is supposed to be a thorough one, and we can't afford not to pick up any information. So all agencies that have anything to do with stormwater management and stormwater that have any kind of jurisdiction over stormwater in municipalities were reached out to, and we were able to get good data in support of the process. Next slide.
It's a little slow changing. Yeah. There we go.
Okay, good. So from the city, we were also able to pick up, we put this up because the bulk of the data that goes into the master plan comes from 2 sources, the city and Miami-Dade County. Then the city was very supportive in providing us different pieces of information that were pertinent and important for building up the model and getting a good understanding of what the ground conditions are within the city. Next slide. From the county, we were able to pick up current topographic data using LiDAR. We were also able to pick up GIS data for the city itself from the county. We cross-checked the GIS data from the city with what you have available in the city records, and it seems to coincide. So we know that the data we're using from the GIS source is very good. We're going to talk more about the XP SWIM models from Durham because the basis for the whole process is the XP SWIM data. These are photographic records. We were out to take some pictures, and we had some pictures in our archives from way back when we've been looking at the city as far as the infrastructure. So we're able to put some of them together. This obviously shows that there is a problem with your stormwater. And this process is the beginning of how we can get it resolved. With the development of analysis criteria, this is a critical component of the master planning process. To develop a master plan, there has to be a basis for how you evaluate the conditions that you have currently in the city and future improvements that need to be implemented to address any deficiencies that are observed or that are occurring right now. So in addition to key drivers, we have the key drivers that we established for the process were predicated on making sure that we're complying with all the regulatory and jurisdictional requirements that relate to stormwater management in locally and statewide. So some of the compliance and regulatory type items are items that are from the city. We wanted to make sure that whatever we do with this master plan, it complies and is consistent with the city's 2030 comprehensive development master plan, which was approved by the city in 2015. Specifically, we looked at the recharge element, the conservation element, and then a capital improvements element. We also wanted to make sure that any criteria we establish complies fully with Miami-Dade County guidelines, because the overarching agency in the county that oversees all the stormwater management for all the municipalities is Miami-Dade County. So making sure that we're in compliance with them, with their requirements, is critical. So we looked into their requirements, and that was also a part of establishing the key drivers. I'll go through the key drivers very quickly. Obviously, the first thing was that any criteria that we put in place has to be one that supports the elimination of flooding or reduces it significantly. The second key driver was to look at ways to reduce stormwater runoff, because if you're able to reduce stormwater runoff, the accumulation becomes less. And so going in and looking at strategies to reduce runoff by increasing infiltration, groundwater recharge, any rainwater harvesting type strategies is a key component of the master planning effort. And then resiliency, that is extremely critical. We're looking to come up with criteria that don't just ensure that your system functions today, but that in the future you would have a system that is not only resilient, but meets the needs of future development plans. And then canal management and canal conveyance. This is a critical aspect of stormwater management. And we'll touch on it a little bit more in the presentation, but one of the characteristics of the city is its canal system, which in our opinion, as your consultant, is currently underutilized. A lot of cities wish they had the canal network and canal presence within their geographic boundaries. Opa-locka has a number of canals to the north, to the south, to the east of Opa-locka that could really play a critical role in making sure that your stormwater infrastructure and management issues are addressed. And so there's going to be a focus on looking at your canals system and possibly developing a program to help you analyze and implement improvements to allow the canals to be able to help you with your stormwater management. Based on that, the analysis that we did, we came up with a recommendation for level of service as it relates to the different components of your stormwater management system. I'm not going to go through each one, but we are really recommending 4 different criteria for use in evaluating the different components that we've identified in here. Next slide. Okay, we're going to move quicker. All right, so as it relates to developing the model, like I said previously, we piggybacked on the C7 and C8 basin assessments that were done by the county. Those models were actually models that were approved by FEMA, and working from that basis gave us the confidence that any model that was based on a FEMA approved model would be one that is obviously in good standing. The process involved extracting data from that model and building a new model based on the data for the city of Opa-locka, and then converting from that software platform into a different platform that allows for design to be easily done once this process gets into the design phase. The graphic you see on the right shows how the city of Opa-locka is located in between those two larger basins that are maintained by Miami-Dade County. Next slide. It's slow again. I talked about canals. This slide just shows you the major canals that are surrounding the city. The city's canals are considered secondary canals. The canals that are under the jurisdiction of Miami-Dade County and South Florida Water Management are considered primary canals. Your secondary canals are capable of discharging into primary canals that have a lot of capacity. Our opinion, our recommendation is if you are able to use your canals to help you with some of your challenges with your stormwater infrastructure, it will go a long way in effecting the improvements that are required as part of this process. Next slide. This is I won't go through this. This is just showing that we divided up the city into smaller basins to get the analysis done. Those basins represent catchment areas within the city and are independent, but are also interrelated because they're right next to each other. So when you have a higher basin than a lower basin, water would naturally surface flow from the higher to the lower basin. This is a slide that just shows the connectivity between the basins. There are links between the basins that represent the stormwater systems, retention areas, and overland weirs. Next slide. This is the same thing. This is showing the C7 canal basin and the network connectivity within it. And then this shows how from those two models, we're able to extract data for the city. So as far as our results, when we did our initial review, our initial runs, we verified the runs by comparing the results of those runs to known issues, historical flooding observations, and feedback from the Public Works Department. We also checked the model for instabilities and inconsistencies, and this is a critical part of the modeling effort. If you have a model that is unstable or inconsistent, if you run it several times, you're going to get different results. We want to make sure that our model is predictive and is consistent in how it predicts results. And then we compared the peak stages on the model to topo. The last way we verified that the model was working correctly was we compared the model to the FEMA flood zone map, which is a widely available document that is accepted by all jurisdictions as the benchmark for how you assess your flooding within the city or within any municipality. And as you can see, a comparison of your model, of the city's model, which is shown on the right, to the FEMA flood zone map shows that there is identical flooding going on in both graphics. This was an indication for us that we had actually arrived at the stopping point for the hydraulic model for the city, which is actually a major milestone for the city. We further verified the consistency between the FEMA floodplain maps and our graphic from our results from the on-radio runs, and you can see that the results are pretty consistent between the model and the FEMA flood zone map. Once we verified that the model was in good shape, we went ahead and ran the smaller events, the 10-year, 24-hour event, which is your roadway criteria, and the 25-year, 72-hour event, which is your canal management criteria. Next slide. Again, we wanted to emphasize what flooding really is. There's a misconception of what flooding is a lot of times. As Donna rightly pointed out, flooding only happens when flooding is any additional staging of stormwater on the roadway that is beyond what the system is capable of handling. So if you have a system designed to handle the required level of service, it should be able to provide the flood protection for your roads. If you have a system that is designed for the on-radio event, it should be able to provide the required protection for your buildings or for the houses on private property. Next slide.
The commercial.
Yeah, it's not changing on mine, but the next slide is the commercial. It just shows this is the same thing as the previous slide, except that this is in a commercial area and the drainage is somewhat different because you have a curb and gutter section as opposed to a swale right next to the road.
Ranking approach. Your audio is gone, Mike. Mike, oh boy. Okay. Mike's audio is gone. I don't know if anybody can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
He
Yes.
muted himself, and I don't know if he's speaking now.
Are you speaking now, Mike? No, we can't hear it.
Okay.
All right. I'd just like to then conclude the presentation just by identifying the accomplishments that we've done. Some of the previous slides that we skipped over summarize the ranking, the priority ranking of the streets and the areas that are flooding. And so we have established the level of service criteria, developed the model, identified and ranked the problem areas, and validated the high priority areas from the modeling results. In order to complete the master plan, we have to finish phase 3, which is now developing the infrastructure improvements, identifying the infrastructure improvements, and submitting that as a deliverable. And then phase 4, which will be completed next, it will be the development of your CIP, identification of available funding programs, putting together the master plan report, and submitting that for commission adoption. I'd like to talk about the future stormwater task, which will be to develop multiple design packages. As soon as the master plan is completed, it will have to be done in multiple phases because sometimes funding is not available all at the same time, and subsequently moving into multiple construction projects. And that concludes this presentation, and I would like to know if there are any questions. I'd like to get Mike back to answer any questions.
All right, let's have Mike log off and log back on. And while we're doing that, I'll open up the floor for any questions or comments.
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Davis.
Thank you. I have one particular question as it relates to the master plan and the community rating process. I do know that the community rating process affords, or is a voluntary program that affords certain incentives for comprehensive flood management. And considering the recent changes in national flood insurance legislation that results in increases in premiums, I'm wondering if, I see it's mentioned in the presentation as a newsletter, but not really as a process. Are we giving consideration to that process and the potential, I guess, of the plan having an impact on residents' ability to obtain and maintain proper flood insurance? To the presenter.
Ms. Grace, did you hear the question? It looks like they're encountering some technical difficulties. Ms. Grace, you may want to close out the window as you have sharing right now, and also may have log off and log back on so that we can hear you. Anyone else from the EAC team can speak and answer the question.
This is Herman Torado from EAC. I've been listening in. I wanted to jot that question down. Can you repeat that question, please?
I'm sure. So my question was relating to the community rating process that's involved in flood plan management. My specific question was, given the recent changes in federal legislation that pretty much affects insurance premiums across the country, including Florida, has this plan or is this plan giving consideration to that change and or the community rating process? Of course, I know it's a voluntary, it's not something that's mandatory, but many cities across the country are taking advantage of this system, and inadvertently it's benefiting residents. So just wanted to know, if that was being considered in the plan.
Well, I might not be able to speak for Mike, but I believe that the stormwater master plan will be a definite springboard into completing an assessment like that we can then bring to the city and the county, because the county is usually the floodplain manager, that we could then take this master plan and extend it into helping us do this analysis for the community rating process and coordinating that with the county.
Okay, so pretty much this is a first step in that process.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, so Michael, you have to connect your audio if you want to speak. So if anyone has any communications with Michael, let him know that there's an extra step to connect audio for him to be able to speak. Any other questions or comments for the presenter? All right, I want to thank EAC for bringing this to our attention of our public. This is one of our 4 major challenges that many of our residents and our business property owners face, is dealing with this flooding. It is something that has been a hot topic, and now that we are in the rainy season, we feel the effects of flooding as we drive through this community. So it's important that we begin this process and we keep our public updated about where we are in analyzing our current flooding stormwater management system, so we can put together the documents that we need in order to do RFPs to take care of this challenge. One of the things I did have a question about, I did see that there was an online survey. Is that survey live and up on our website? And is this something that our community is able to put in their information to give their thoughts on? Or is this something that's coming up in the near future?
This is Herman Torado again from EAC. I just wanted to say that we do have the survey and these forms online, and Donna could nod her head to basically agree with me. But we do have the first form, and the second form I think should also be available on the website for the citizens to be able to address and raise these issues that they're seeing.
All right, we would love to get that and make sure it's promoted so that our residents can be engaged in this process. My next question is, when will we be getting a clearer understanding of the anticipated costs in those projects? And when will we be able to start to see some projects moving within the city of Opa-locka?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Michael.
Hi. I am so sorry. Technical difficulties. Sometimes technology is difficult to deal with.
Did you hear the question?
No, I didn't.
So my question was, when will we be able to identify the anticipated costs for these projects. We'll be able to see those plans and documents so that we can get the ball rolling and allocating the funds in our budget to do so. And when will we be able to start to see those projects moving within our city?
Okay, Donna, if you could move to the first slide, please, because that explains it better. If you have that up. We can't hear your voice, but to answer your question, sir, the projects will be identified in the next phase of the project of this process. We're anticipating that by the 2nd of September, we will be presenting in front of you again, showing you what projects are conceptually identified and prioritized for the process. Once those projects are approved to go into design, there's a separate design process that would occur to get the engineering plans done and the projects bid out for a contractor to come in and do the actual construction of each of the projects. In terms of a timeline to get the construction started, I recall that we're estimating that construction work would actually start on these projects by next year, June 2022. The good news is that the city already has a head start on some of the projects that are anticipated to be part of the master plan. And where our understanding is that some of those projects are actually in design right now, even without completing the master plan. They would happen in parallel or in concert with the master plan. So on those projects, you should see construction starting probably before the end of June next year.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Casey? I want to thank you very much for the presentation that you provided. We're going to move into our public forum. If you want to stay on to hear from some of our residents, they will be able to speak and hear more. And we hope that we'll be able to provide some type of response through our legislative aid to those residents that speak so that they can get a response to their questions. So I want to thank you very much for taking the time to present to us and the work that you're doing to help us with one of our major challenges here in this city. We look forward to continuing to work to address the flooding throughout our city of Opa-locka. Thank you. All right.
Frequently asked questions for the questions and the answers.
Unfortunately, we weren't able to hear that last part because we're having audio issues, but want to thank you for your time. All right, let's move on to Citizens Forum. Madam Clerk, could you go over the protocols for Citizens Forum?
Good evening. City of Opa-locka Commission meetings are held in person at Sherbondi Village Auditorium, 215 Purvis Avenue, Opa-locka, Florida. Members of the public wishing to address the commission may do so in person or virtually. Those persons wishing to participate virtually should register prior to the scheduled meeting time on the city's website at www.opalockafl.gov. When speaking before the commission, please make sure to give your full name and address for the record. There is a 3-minute time limit for public comments. Please adhere to the decorum policy, which is part of the commission meeting agenda. City commission meetings are aired through live stream at www.youtube.com/user/City of Opa-locka. And Mr. Mayor, there are no virtual public comments at this time.
All right, thank you very much. Citizen Forum is open.
Okay. Good evening, Commissioners, Mayor, Vice Mayor. Audrey Dominguez, 1147 Jan Avenue. I would like to talk about the budget workshop that was held July 22nd. I presented to you guys a chart for your review of the 2020 adopted mileage rate for all cities and municipalities. As you can see, the city of Opa-locka has the highest rate at 9.80 for several years. The proposal is to lower it by 0.15, and if it's not lowered, it will be increased by 4.72, making the total 14.52%. Last year was a very tough year with COVID. Many residents lost their jobs, and the ones that remain employed did not receive an increase in pay. You have the elderly that some of them own their homes, however, they're on a fixed income. Social Security doesn't change for them. And if it does, it might be lowered or increased by $6 or $7 a month. On the adopted budget of the city of Opa-locka, the organizational chart, the first name that you see on the top says citizens, the mayor and the city commission. The city and the commission needs to do better and truly make the residents first, not on paper. 0.15 mils is appreciated. However, this will still keep us in a high rate versus the larger cities. I also heard in the meeting recommending moving the legislative aid to the city manager's office to do legislative work. I think this would be a great idea, being that that's his title. You know, sometimes people are moved from areas where the help is needed. I mean, during COVID, I had to do a different job that I had no idea how to do. A lot of Adobe sign, a lot of answering calls and things of that nature. Now, my question is to you guys, I'm not sure, I think the only person that probably can answer this question is, I want to know who hired the legislative aid and who made the final decision to hire Mr. Grice. He's a wonderful young man, very nice, respectful, but this came into my mind as far as to, I just wanted to be on record. So if I don't know who's the person that can answer, I don't know, it could be the city clerk, but that's one of the questions that I have. I also like to thank the chief of police for setting vehicles in key areas where there is a high rate of crime and also speeding, which I've seen a change in that in my area, at least, as far as the speeding.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Brian Dennis, 2140 York Street. I told a coach, come here, coach. On the park, I was gonna do something for him, and I told Commissioner Burke that I work with juveniles every day. I'm sorry. And you got to start in your own city first. You got to start in your own city first. So I told Commissioner Burke what I was gonna do. So through the Opa-locka Booster Club, I was gonna get him some players and just tell them to go play. I was gonna pay for them. But I found out, I got a call that he needed some equipment. So it's not to embarrass anybody. I hope that's not what it is. Y'all think it is. But I just wanted, because Commissioner Burke isn't here, I just wanted him to see that I kept my word and I told him what I would do for this young man and the team and let them get the equipment that they need. The stormwater master plan, I really would like to see that. Because there's a long dynamic in the city that has a flood line to it. And when you're talking about putting stormwater drains across the city, we don't seen this before. And yet the very same areas that the stormwater drain is supposed to drain the water still floods. So you have to go back and look at the master plan and see what it is, because what's winding up happening is we're paying money for the same thing and we're not getting the value of it. It's not producing. So that's another thing that we have to look at. I really want to see it because I know where the flood zone at in the city. That was the longest budget meeting I ever seen in my life. Vice Mayor. Got to give it to you. The apartment building, I was shaking my head the whole time y'all were talking about it. You're basically trying to squeeze something somewhere. And if the residents start fighting for parking and the business is going on at the same time, so you can't anticipate that everybody's going to be going to work at 9 to 5 or 7 to 5 or whatever. You can't do that. And there's new technology about sliding and slotting cars. No. You have to do something better than what's being proposed. That's all I'm saying. If you're going to develop the community in a way that it should be done. Vice Mayor, again, I got to take my hat off to you. Great job.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commission and staff. My name is Dottie Johnson. I reside at 13724 Northwest 22nd Place in Opa-locka. First of all, I would like to say congratulations to the grant writer and to staff for being a recipient through the city from the Department of Economic Development in Tallahassee. Congratulations, very much needed. I too think your budget workshop was very interesting. However, one of my main concerns, I have several, but one of my main concerns is the proposed budget of $25,000 for the commission. Now, I heard the dialogue where you wanted to analyze for the police department, but we, the taxpayer, want accountability from you. I know that, and I didn't see in the budget, and I have a copy of the booklet, the itemized usage for your special events. Now I've come and I find that sometimes it's a waste of time, but I am going to continue as long as I pay tax. I'm going to continue to come. But one of the citizens came up and she made a suggestion. Maybe this is something you can consider during your budget proposed. I know it needs to be in Tallahassee by August 1st, but I don't think you have the funds to do multiple events. And I think it was suggested for a multicultural celebration because you have a diverse community. And I hope that that didn't go on deaf ears. My takeaway that I heard so much dialogue about the police department, what the rank, what the title. Well, we the people, we want public safety. And I hope, along with several other citizens, that this is not a strategy to defund the police department, because public safety is a key in any viable community. The community dialogue, you know, I think as an elected official, just be careful who you talk around. Now I heard and I know who it was, but I'm gonna be respectful and not put it on record. Where at the event over in Ingram, one of the elected officials was asked about why don't you have a lot of community dialogue? And it was mentioned that the individuals that come up to speak to the commission are troublemakers. I would not want to be considered as a troublemaker, neither anyone else because you get a few, the same ones, but be grateful. But I, along with others, are not a troublemaker. I need clarification because I've seen, what was that?
That's a 3-minute time limit.
Can I just mention my last?
And please wrap it up very quickly. So we want to be respectful of everyone's time. 3 minutes is our limit for everyone.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor.
Please wrap it up.
I need clarification on deferring of agenda items because I've seen deferrals continue to have a lot of dialogue, and for protocol, I don't think it's right according to Robert rules. Thank you so much, sir.
Good evening, Commissioner and Mayor and Vice Mayor and distinguished panel. My name is Dr. Robert Barnett. I reside at 779 Atlantic Avenue, Opa-locka. I came to this meeting to discuss something about a zoning for my property, an issue that I'm having. But in the meeting, I heard this presentation for the stormwater project, the drainage project. And I am a graduate of Florida Memorial College in the field of biology, biological science. And something I didn't hear mentioned or brought forward to the commission was environmental impact. I know we have a huge problem from south of 135th Street and west of 27th Avenue going down to the railroad tracks, which is a major flood zone. But we also have a huge area of contamination that could go into our runoff that could, affect the whole city and actually, the ocean from this point on, because that canal, from living in Opa-locka for 42 years, I know that canal runs all the way out to the Aventura and out to the waterway. So that's something I would just want to suggest to the commission. I know it's very difficult and something that Durham would take into consideration, but I have been involved in a study with Dr. William Hopper in my final year at Florida Memorial College, or at university now, where we did a study of minority-owned areas or minority areas where residents reside, where the properties are sitting on more contamination than other areas in the whole county. So this is something that I think that the city should take into consideration, because I have a canal right in front of my house, and you can see a lot of the stormwater that runs off the street into those canals and is filled with trash. And these are things that we need to take into consideration when we look at these projects. So that's something that I think that should be addressed with EAC in planning this project. I came to the commission to ask for a variance on the zoning of my property. I'm trying to park a boat in my yard, and I've had an extensive amount of problems with the code enforcement of keeping the boat there. The boat is not a hindrance. My neighbors don't have a problem with it. It is not an environmental problem, and it's not an eyesore to the area. And I would like to ask for that variance, or to see if that variance could be granted by the city or by the commissioner. I know I've talked to Mr. Lee and Mr. Gay that are involved in the zoning office, and I haven't heard back from them. So I figured my best option would come to the commissioner and ask directly to the mayor and to the commissioner to see if they could actually push that issue and see if they could give me some lenience in this matter. Because I look at my property and the layout, and there seems to be some changes that was done back. I know we moved into the property back in the 70s, and you can see where the property and all the properties in that area, that particular property was changed to where there was a property added. I remember this house being built, and the house has, I wouldn't want to point fingers, but it was done a little clandestine, and it's created a problem where I don't have access to my backyard to be able to put the boat behind the house. So it creates a problem for me. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other citizens? All right, citizen forum is closed. I'll open the floor for any responses.
Mr. Mayor,
And Commissioner Davis.
thank you. First, I'll comment on Mrs. Dominguez related to the millage rate. As you know, we've been contemplating the millage rate and potentially lowering it during this fiscal year. I pretty much share your same sentiments of, we have the highest millage rate out of the 34 municipalities that call Miami-Dade County home. One other statistic that also troubles me is that we also simultaneously also have the highest poverty rate of any city in Miami-Dade County, which in my opinion makes even more of a case to take it down. This budget season, you kind of alluded to some of the statistics, but ultimately, if we take the millage rate down a tenth of a mil, we're talking about roughly $116,000 of property tax revenue that we'll have to essentially fill the void or find supplemental funding. So, the budget ultimately is on the agenda tonight. It's a pulled item, so we'll be discussing it. But the hope is to get the budget up and back before September so that we can approve it. But again, it's not going to be final until it goes up in September and the state approves. So any discussions regarding the millage and the potential to make any sort of variance to it can happen in between that time. So we look forward to having those conversations. I'm sorry, I didn't get his name, but relative to the stormwater plan and the potential of having, I think he was speaking of having some sort of contaminated runoff. I just want to say thanks for making that point because it is a valid point. Considering that many of our properties here in the city of Opa-locka are what they consider brownfield properties or contaminated properties. So because of our industrial nature, we have a lot of brownfield areas. So that would be a point of concern in developing some sort of comprehensive flood plan as contamination could play a potential role. So I look forward and following up on that and ensuring that that is incorporated in the environmental impact of the plan. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all I have.
Anyone else? I want to thank everyone that came up today to speak about that. We will address the millage rate in today's budget conversation and also legislative aid to Mr. Dr. Bonnet. The zoning variance, please see our legislative aid and also our city manager to get your assistance on those things. I want to thank everyone that came up and spoke, and we will get down to our business and our action items. All right, Madam Attorney, 13-1.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Opa-locka, Florida, approving and establishing a city special events list for the 2021-2022 fiscal year and a budget attached hereto as Exhibit A, providing for incorporation of recitals, providing for scrivener's errors, providing for an effective date. This is sponsored by the city manager. It was deferred from the July 14th, 2021 regular commission meeting.
All right, do I have a motion?
Move it.
Moved by Vice Mayor Williams,
Second.
second by Commissioner Taylor. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to ask my Parks Director, Mr. Delvin Patterson, come up and speak on this resolution.
Good evening, Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, Commissioners. Delvin Patterson, Parks and Rec Director. I'm here to speak about the special events calendar and the budget. We workshopped this item twice this month. We established a special events calendar to be more prepared and organized for our special events that's happening in the city, along with the budget. Commissioners and commissioners added things to this calendar just to put it on there along with our city events on this calendar. Staff recommend approval of this calendar. Prepared to answer any questions. Thank you.
Floor is open for my colleagues. The commission.
Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor Williams.
Thank you. This question is to Mr. Patterson. In our agenda tonight, I noticed the budget for Parks and Recreation and also a list for special events for Park and Recreation. Are we specifically talking about the events that fall under Parks and Recreation, or are we talking about commission-sponsored events? That's where I'm not clear right now.
Well, we're talking about all of the events with the commission and the Parks and Rec all put into this one calendar. I listed out the Parks events from the commission event, so I wanted to separate that out, the park events from the commission events, and I wanted to put it all on one calendar.
Okay, so Mr. Mayor, this question is to Mr. Ellis.
Yes,
According to the agenda item, we're going to vote on the special events policy. I'm confused because I'm not seeing all of the special events in the agenda. So I just want to make sure clear which one are we discussing. Right now, I only see Parks and Recreation, and I don't see the entire full calendar in front of us.
The calendar supposed to be in front of you, I'm not sure.
No, it's
The
not in our
calendar is not in
agenda.
front of you?
So what I'm saying is the budget for Parks and Recreation and the programs, special events for Parks and Recreation. I'm
So-
not saying any
Right,
of
right.
these.
So we're supposed to be voting on the calendar, and the calendar, you're supposed to have the calendar in your packets for this evening.
We
No,
do not.
I'm not sure where we slipped up. We could get some copies of that calendar.
Was this submitted to the clerk's office?
For the budget workshop, yes, I was assuming that it would be submitted for tonight for this council, this commission meeting.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah,
Madam
each department is responsible for uploading their items to Granicus, and whatever was uploaded is what's in the packet.
okay. So that was my mistake. I thought that the calendar was going to be into your packets, but I can't get that calendar really quickly, if you guys would like.
So my question is the budget is, Mr. Ellis, is this the Parks and Recreation budget, or is this the special commission items also built in the Parks and Recreation budget? That's where I'm not clear, and I'm not comfortable with voting on this if I'm not clear.
That's the Parks and Rec budget. That's the Parks and Rec budget.
Okay, so
Yes.
the agenda item doesn't say that.
Well, yes, Mr. Patterson answered your question sufficiently, Vice Mayor, which budget it's in. And maybe Bob, are we correct on the budget? Can you help out with this since you developed it? And I think that one of the things that we were trying to stress in this particular special event budget was that the events were going to be funded for everything that's in there is for all of our commission sponsored citywide events. Am I correct?
Good evening, Bob Anderson, Budget. The answer to the question, the special events line, the dollar amount that's associated with it right now includes both the normal events that you would expect to see each year, plus the additional funding for the commissioner discretionary events. I believe the number that you should see for a special events line in total is $46,000. Okay. Well, in the budget itself, when you look at the budget in total, you'll see $46,000 in the line labeled special events.
Mr. Mayor?
Vice Mayor, are you done? Okay, Commissioner Taylor?
Okay. I'm with Vice Mayor on this, because even with the backup documentation that you have, there's some events that don't even have totals to it, but that are lined in the budget, outlined in the budget. For example, the MLK Walk, there's no dollar amount assigned to it.
Correct. Usually those events that have no dollar amount really don't have any totals for the budgets. Like you see the MLK, the chess tournament, those is not any cost to the city.
But we proposed, the initial proposal was 1,000, and then I think it was supposed to be elevated to 2,000.
Correct.
But that's not in this packet.
I think that's reflected in the new budget when we present that.
So
it's in the new budget,
okay,
the 2,000.
That's the issue that we're having. The budget says one thing, but this paper says totally different thing. So
Correct. I'm not sure if you have the updated one, but
no, we just have
we will provide that to you. I will provide that to you.
It has a list of all of the parks events
Uh-huh.
and description of special events. It's like a generic, something generic.
Correct. So what do you have in front of you? Just the parks events. We'll get that the special events calendar to you
Mr.
along with the budget.
Hanington said 46,000,
Correct.
but this paper says 21,000.
Correct. That's only the Parks and Rec. That's the only the Parks and Rec budget. But we will get you the right one this evening.
Which is going to include the commission event.
It's going to include all the commission events along with the Parks and Rec events.
Through the mayor.
Vice Mayor?
Directing this question to Madam City Attorney. If we vote tonight, are we voting on the agenda item, or are we voting on what we see in front of us? And I just want to make sure we're voting on.
You're voting on what you see in front of us, but should include the information that you're speaking about right now.
So if the information is incorrect, because it appears as a preliminary budget and special events description was uploaded and not the correct finalized one.
If it's uploaded and it's in front of you, you can, and the staff explains it and you can understand the explanation, certainly you can vote on it, should you understand it, and with the caveat that the correction be made in the document. You can do that if you choose to. You can also, as the gentleman mentioned, if you all wanted to just delay this for a little bit on the agenda, get the information and be able to, move the item along, come back to it once they have the appropriate documents in front of you. Bob and I spoke about a specific issue, which I don't think this is it, and Mr. Mayor, if I may. I don't think this is it, Bob, but is this the type of issue you were talking about where the calculation would have to be done at a later time? This isn't it, is it? Okay, all right, I just want to make sure. So if you do have the appropriate documents, Mr. Mayor, if you would allow him to get them and then you all, circulate back to this and perhaps look at it when you have everything in front of you properly.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Manager?
Yes, sir. What I'd like to do is pull this item, defer this item rather until a later date, maybe to September next commission meeting, so we get some more input and some more information back out to you all in relationship to this item. So you have a full understanding of what we're trying to do with this special event item.
All right, so this is the manager's item. He wants to pull it, and before it's pulled, is there any final thoughts or comments on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I really didn't get a chance, but I had a
Commissioner Davis.
problem with the agreement. Section 1.19, page 456, I believe. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. But I had a problem with the agreement because we had taken out the commission-sponsored events, and I still saw that language reflected in the agreement. So if when the item is deferred, if that change could also be made to reflect the manager's changes in the policy, I would appreciate that as well.
Any other thoughts? Mr. Manager, we've been discussing this item for a few workshops, a few meetings, and we've had the same list as part of the agenda packet, even though we've discussed many others. I want to make sure that at this next item that we have a list. This particular resolution explicitly states that we are establishing a special events list for the 2021-2022 fiscal year and the budget. So that means that all the events that we're planning on doing, special events, should be listed out in this document as we pass it. So I know that we want to see that. And could you speak to how, if we pull this item, how would that align with the budget that we're anticipating to pass today? If we don't have that list of events included in the budget conversation as required by our policy, how does that play out?
Mr. Manager, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to defer it until the next scheduled meeting so that we can provide all the information to you clearly.
All right. So, but the specific question was tonight.
Okay.
We are voting on a budget. All right.
Yes, sir.
And our policy states that on section 2 of our policy, annual planning and budgeting, that it says that at the time the commission will provide guidance to the Parks and Recreation Director as to specific events to be incorporated into next year's budget. including the cost for each event. So if not fully resolved in May, and the meeting, the Parks and Recreation Director will present to the Commission in June a final schedule of primary events for the coming year to ensure there is consensus. So it specifically lays out that these events should be a part of his budget conversation. So if we're going to be discussing the budget later on today, how us deferring this to after the budget, how would that affect?
The final budget is not approved until September, sir.
Okay, so that means the budget that we're going to send to the state will not include these special events.
Yes,
And
it will,
bring
it will
back
have
in
special
budget.
event information in it, but it might not be the final line item or final amount, you know, until we decide what that final budget is going to be in September.
Okay, all right. Hearing no further comments, this item is deferred. Moving on to item 13.3.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Opa-locka, Florida, setting the proposed budget for the City of Opa-locka, Florida as required by the state and local agreement of cooperation between the governor and the City of Opa-locka, Florida for fiscal year 2021 through 2022, establishing requirements for the approval of the city budget on or before August 1st, and forwarding to the governor the proposed annual budget of the city as preliminarily approved by the City Commission for the FY 2021-2022, and directing the city manager to forward a copy of this resolution and approved proposed budget to the governor, providing for incorporation of recitals, providing for an effective date. This is sponsored by the city manager.
Do I have a motion?
Move it.
Moved by Commissioner Taylor,
Second.
second by Commissioner Davis. Mr. Manager?
Mr. Mayor,
No. Madam Clerk?
just for the record, there was a substitute resolution provided with some changes.
All right. And we have to adopt this substitute item. We need to make a motion to adopt the substitute item, or it would just,
I'm sorry, I'm not 100% sure about that. Maybe the city attorney can provide a response.
Madam Clerk, is this intended to take the place of item number 3?
Yes.
Yes, this would be, this would have been actually, yes, this document is fine, that you have the proper document before you. It just needs to be read into the record. It was pulled, and this would be the substitute item that you would be reading into the record and voting upon the item in front of you. There can be a change made or something like that, as long as you all have it. It really, you do have the title publicly noticed that you would be voting on this item. And I think there was just a small, it's nothing major in the document that changes the nature of the document. So it is appropriate for you all to look at what you have in front of you as the substitute item and vote on that item.
okay, so can we read this item into the record?
It's the same title. It's the same title, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Mr. Manager, could you introduce this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have our Budget Director, Bob Anthony, to speak, please.
Good evening again, Bob Anderson, Budget. I'm more concerned, is the resolution that was substituted, is that for the millage rate or is that for the budget?
Mr. Mayor, the budget resolution.
Okay,
Yes,
I
this
stand
is the
corrected. I
budget.
didn't realize that changed. My bad. I apologize. Okay, very quickly, we're probably about halfway through the FY22 budget journey. What I propose to do tonight is to provide you from some updates from where we were during the workshop, and then leave it open to any and all questions you might have in terms of anything we've discussed so far. So if we can get started. Again, the agenda is as indicated there. Just a quick review of the budget adoption process. It's been alluded to several times tonight. I just want to make clear that everybody is clear as to what we're doing tonight and what the follow-on ramifications are. A couple responses to workshop issues that were raised, take through there, hopefully remove any mystery that's involved with them. We did implement a couple of changes, as also was discussed tonight. I'll show you that very briefly. At that point, I am prepared to go back through what we covered during the workshop, or if that's the desire of the commission, or more, otherwise, any and all questions that may have come up, we'll try and resolve at this point. And after that, you will adopt the budget for forward into the state. Next one, please. Okay, just to make it clear, and it's been referred to several times tonight already, the budget that is adopted now is only the first step in terms of what is going to be the final budget. In fact, there are really literally 8 weeks till the final adoption of the budget. So what you see in front of you tonight is, after discussion, you will adopt a preliminary budget, which will go to the state by the 1st. They're going to do a review and they will make any appropriate adjustments that they deem appropriate. I will point out last year that the budget that did go up to the state did in fact become the final budget, but that worked out that way, does not have to be that way. We are scheduled for a first official budget hearing on September 15th. And again, if there are any issues that are not resolved tonight that continue to be of concern, they can be addressed at that budget hearing. And then again, at the final budget hearing on the 29th, again, any further adjustments that are necessary. If in fact there are adjustments to what the state has approved during the month of August and has sent back to us, it'll go back up to the state. That should be a rather simple process because the adjustments that may occur during the September meetings should not be major in terms of the entire budget they reviewed. So presumption is there'll be a quick further review and return to the city for action. So that is the general process that we're going through tonight. We are at the first bullet in terms of the list of activities on that page. Next page, please. Issues from the prior workshop that I'm going to address very quickly tonight are twofold. One is I offered up at the time then, and I'm prepared to further discuss it at this time. The estimate right now for the FY20 budget is for the general fund that it appears from everything I can see, in which I will demonstrate to you this evening, that there will be a surplus in excess of $6 million in terms of funds received versus expenditures in 2020. The second issue I'm going to address very quickly is there was an issue that was raised and not fully addressed at the time. There is a request or a recommendation in regards to the staffing of the police department that in fact 5 positions be added, 5 sworn positions that is, and then 3 non-sworn positions. And I'll go through very briefly as to the duties they would assume if that recommendation is accepted. Next page, please. This may be a little bit of an eye chart, and I apologize for it. It's best I can do under what we have available tonight. This is explaining why that what I'm looking at is a $6.6 million surplus in FY20. You can see down, oops, sorry about that. Strangely enough, my car fob does not serve as a pointer. But this does. Down at the bottom there, you can see $6.647 million of surplus revenues or surplus fundings over expenditures for FY20. What I'm showing on this page is I'm starting with the FY19 numbers from the audit to show you what a starting point is for discussing FY20. Next to it, you do have the FY20s, basically based on information that is currently in the city's accounting system. And then obviously on, excuse me, the right, excuse me again, the right-hand column, you can see the changes over FY19. And I'm just going to take you down the right-hand column. The first number that you can see right there is your property tax. And it is going to be in the neighborhood of $2.2 million greater than it was in FY19. That is normal growth of maybe $300,000 or $400,000. And also the fact that Amazon for the first time came online in the city's property tax base, added about $188 million to the property tax base, which translates roughly to about $1.9 million. So that is the first thing that occurred in FY20 that contributes to a very significant increase in funding. The second item is building permits. Somewhat low in FY19, a very large number in FY20. When I say building permits, it also includes electrical permits, mechanical permits, plumbing permits, so forth. In the latter part of FY20, there were some very major projects that came on in the range of $300,000-$400,000 worth of permits. That, in fact, contributes to the 1.3 million. So the second line of increase is, you can see it here, essentially $1 million in permits over what was experienced in FY19. The third line, red light cameras. It's my understanding that FY19, there was a period of deferral on red light camera revenue, and consequently only $646,000 were recorded. For FY20, I've seen each of the monthly reports come in. Each of the monthly reports on average is about $100,000. So you're looking at another $630,000 of increase right there. Code enforcement, very low level in FY19, FY20, and certainly in part due to the amnesty program, a high level of code enforcement revenue, which adds another $250,000 to the increased revenue for FY20. I'm going to skip the other. It's a small number, not worth commenting on. Two final numbers. You can see a very large increase in the transfers in from debt service. I'll say very briefly, if it's not clear, please let me know and I'll discuss it further. But the bank was sitting, that's not the right term. The bank was withholding about $5.2 million that would have normally come to the city. And they were doing that because there was concerns about the covenant that was in place on the borrowing. They judged to be in violation, and they deemed that they had the right to withhold it. In the spring of last year, after negotiations between the bank and the city, they did release $5.2 million. They did take half of that, $2.6 million, and put it against the debt that financed 780 Fishman Street. They did release the other half of it back to the city for city use, and consequently, of the 2.7, 2.6 has to do with the funds that were released at that time. And then the final ingredient to get us up to the revenues that we're looking at for FY20, there is transfers in from the other funds, primarily the water sewer fund and the stormwater fund, to cover G&A expenses provided by the general fund for these funds, such as financial services, guidance from the commission, city manager, and so forth. For whatever reason in the FY19 audit, there was no entry made for that. I have talked to the acting finance director, and she assures me that that will be corrected in FY20. That contributes another $500,000. So when you go through this entire list of changes that we see in FY20 over FY19, in fact, you do end up with $7.4 million more in funding than what we experienced in FY19. Now, the bottom half of the equation is obviously the expenditures against it, and I'm not going to go through it in excessive detail, but you can see that there was some increase in FY20 in terms of what I can see in the accounts right now. But again, only $500,000 versus an increase in revenue of $7.4 million. And that gives you a result of having $6.6 million go to the bottom line as surplus. Now, this is highly unusual, but all the pieces seem to be there, and I have great sense of confidence that you will see a number that approaches that number. Are there any questions on this item, particularly since it was somewhat contentious and not well understood previously? Okay, hearing none. Next page, please. This is only, the sole purpose of this page is just to give you a quick snapshot again of what this means for the fund balance. You can see the 6.647 that we just talked about. Right now, my best forecast for FY21 is another $1.87 million. And as you know, we have proposed the use of fund balance for FY22. We started with a $2.2 million negative fund balance based on the FY19 audit, which becomes the opening position for FY20. Take the two increases, gets you up to 6.3, 6.299, if you will. Recommending, and we'll discuss this further, the 2.15 use of fund balance, which would get you down to, at the end of FY22, essentially a fund balance of a little over 4.1 million. And just a brief reminder, under city policy and under GFOA standards, the required target balance for that is $3.3 million. So the 4.1 is still a very healthy number in comparison to our $3.3 million target. So unless there's any questions at that point, I will move on to a related topic. Next slide, please. This gets a little bit busy, but what I want to show is a point that I don't think I made, but I'll make it now. To use fund balance, the rules for using fund balance is you should not be using it for one-time occurrences. You want to make sure that you have enough revenue to cover your ongoing operations and that any fund balance used are strictly for one-time purposes. So to reset very quickly FY20 just to cause a path through to where we're going to go. FY20 we discussed in a lot of detail. That got you the $6.6 million surplus. For FY21, I said there is we're forecasting a $1.8 million, closer to $1.9 million surplus for current year. The prime ingredients in that, just as a reminder, is you can see the one thing that is suddenly a very large number, certainly not before, certainly not after, is $3.8 million in grants. That is all of the County CARES Act grant funding that the city received. Half of that went to expenses that showed up down here and other uses. Just a reminder, it was the cash cards during the Christmas, cash food cards, I should say, during the Christmas, for in total about 1.8 million of the 2.3. The rest of it pretty well went to the bottom line and is responsible for the increase that we're seeing at this point. So that's the preamble to get into FY22. The proposed budget is over here in the right-hand column. And again, there's your 2.155 use of fund balance we've been talking about. I've broken it into two parts. That which is ongoing, which you really need to do to demonstrate that in fact you are a sustainable organization, and you can see ongoing as defined here, in fact, produces a very minor surplus. One-time things, and I'll show you the details of this on the next couple of slides. These are the things that you can spend money on when you have fund balance. You are authorized to use that fund balance for one-time purposes. 712 in operating expense, we'll look at that in some detail. Capital, 527,000. This is not CIP. These are smaller capital events within the general fund itself. And then within the transfer out, there's another $930,000 that are really can be assigned to one-time activity. So if I can get the next slide, please. Next slide, thank you. What we're looking at here is the one-time operating expenses, one-time expenses within the operating expense category. We had talked about 712,000 on the prior slide, and these are the type of things that are constituted as one-time activity. For example, in the budget for FY22, we're going to do 2 audits. Normally, you only do 1 audit. So on a one-time, this additional 42,000 has to be considered as one time because when you get to FY23, you're only going to do one annual budget. You're doing the evaluation appraisal report. You do that once every 7 years. And so consequently, that is deemed to be one time as well. Professional services, this is first and foremost is the financial consultant operations, including some additional staffing that they using from temporary services. That is scheduled to be completed within the budget assumption for that is that will be completed by July 1st of 2022. And therefore, when you get to FY23, you won't see that. And without going through each of the other ones very quickly, those are the types of things you can look at and say, hey, we're going to do it in FY22. We will not do it again in FY23. Therefore, we deem them to be one-time expenditures. If I can have the next slide, please. This is, on 2 slides back now, we had talked about $500,000 of one-time activities. Capital almost by definition is one-time because 99 times out of 100, you always have the right not to do it, and you will continue to do what you have, maybe not quite as efficiently, but you always have the ability to not spend your capital. So you can see here, as I said, we're talking essentially $500,000. You've got a couple, the really big one is Parks Recreation. That covers their need for a couple of vehicles. They put together a plan where they could really look at $600,000 to $700,000 of improvements they'd like to make. We only put $200,000 in the budget just to begin to move in that direction without trying to do too much at once. Again, these are all capital. They can be turned off. None of it needs to be spent if the decision is made not to. So it also qualifies as one-time expenditures. Down here, you have $36,000. That's first and foremost a surveillance system for public works. Down here, you have $60,000 to paint 3 buildings, and down here you have a bucket truck. So these are also deemed to be one-time expenditures and therefore allowable under the rules to use excess fund balance for one-time expenditures. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm missing one. There was one on transfers out. It seems to drop out. Go back 2 slides, please. One more, please. Yeah, right here. There was $930,000 in transfers out. I'm not sure how that slide dropped out, but I can talk to it very quickly. In there are things like transfers to the IT services funds. There's $100-some thousand in there. I'm sorry, there's $300,000 in there for ERP installation next year. That would be a one-time expenditure. There's another $250,000 that's going to town center. I'm sorry, $225,000 going to town center. Within the town center budget, you've got $100,000 in there to paint the building, one time. You've got $50,000 of replacement carpet, again, one time. And you also have in excess of $100,000 of property tax. We're going to take the actions necessary to make sure that that does not repeat in FY23. So that also becomes a one-time activity. So these are the types of things that in total allow us to abide by the guidance that is embedded within the city policies, spend this kind of money, $2.1 million, and still be in accordance with city policy and still maintain an acceptable, in fact, an attractive fund balance. So having said that, before I move on very quickly, are there any questions on that that come to mind that I can possibly address?
Any questions?
Okay.
Could you move to the next slide?
Next slide, please.
You went by pretty fast. It's our first time seeing this.
Yes, sir.
So this is explaining the one-time expenses that is, so just so that we're clear, we are using 2.2 million of our general fund balance to cover the overage that we're having in our general fund, and this 712, the 539, the 900,000 are the one-time expenditures that are required by our law to ensure that we can use that funds.
if I may word this, is permissible to use, not required, but under our policy, if we're above fund balance threshold of 3.3 million, it is allowable to use it for one-time purchase or one-time activities, of which this is, and which the other two numbers you just mentioned are portions of that.
Okay, and we're missing the slide for the largest amount, 900,000.
Yes, sir. But I can address it. There's 300,000 to the IT fund transfer out as part of the total IT budget for this for FY22 is about 1.1 million, relatively higher than usual. And the thing that causes it is about $450,000 to $500,000 of ERP installation.
Can we receive this document?
Sir?
Are we going to be able to receive this document?
Including the missing one, yes, sir.
Okay. And I'm looking at the first line.
Yes, sir.
We're budgeting $42,000 for each audit.
Yes, sir. And again, this is only the general fund side of it. You've got another piece of your audit down in your water sewer fund.
Okay, because I know that in the past, our audits have costed at least $65,000.
Yes, sir. The split that we make on this is 1/3 is in the in the enterprise funds, 2/3 in this. So if it's 42,000, then do my math very quickly. So that would be 150%. So 28,000. What we've got in for each audit would be $70,000.
Okay.
So.
You can proceed. That's all the questions I have.
I will certainly cause these slides to be distributed to everybody. If there are any other questions, that I'll move on to the next issue that came up during the workshop. Next slides, please. Oh, no, okay, please go on. There we go. The issue was brought up, as I said at the outset, there is a recommendation to increase the police department staffing. The recommended increase is 5 sworn positions and 3 non-sworn positions. And there is a long statement on that the chief of police has prepared, but it boils down to the following use of the increase in personnel. Want to make a very robust community policing a very robust community policing activity. For obvious reasons, you're trying to get to the areas that will cause crime to evolve if other precautionary actions aren't taken. So long story short, we're talking about 4 officers plus 1 non-sworn as a community outreach specialist in that. Then the other 5th officer and then the other 2 non-sworn positions are to deal with the traffic positions in the city, both speeding and also the parking issues. So that is the proposal for the 8 additional positions. Next slide, please. The changes that we have actually built into the budget as exists at the moment, some of them were just reformatting. We took the $800,000, I'm sorry, my bad, took the $8,000 travel budget and broke it into 5 discrete accounts of $1,800 with 1 for each of the 5 commission members. What we also did, which changed the total slightly, is we had a lesser number in there for the allowance for expenses that are provided within the code that allows each member of a commission to spend up to $200 per month of documented expenses consistent with their duties. So that did add a few $1,000 to the budget. The other thing, and this was alluded to previously this evening, within the budget at this moment, the MLK walk was increased from $1,000 to $2,000. And there is also a line in there labeled other, and the $1,000 that was put into the MLK budget was taken out of that lineup. The last minor change we made is there was some discussion about the summer camp really needed a line for clothing, read that to be shirts and so forth. So we did take $500 and put a separate, not an account, but a detail line item within the summer camp program. And we took the money out of camp supplies. So these are the minor changes that have been made since last Thursday. Next slide, please. So at this point, I can take you through the highlights of the presentation that we had on last Thursday, or I can leave it open and try to address any and all questions you might have at this point.
Floor is open for the commission.
Mr. Mayor,
Vice Mayor.
I think that we are very well versed on the presentation since we've had 2 budget workshops already. So I would like for us to continue to move on and not revisit what we've already heard twice. Thank you.
Perfect.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Commissioner Davis.
Relative to the American Rescue Plan, those anticipated funds, I know they're scheduled to come in this upcoming fiscal year. Are they being realized in this budget?
No, sir, they're not recognized at all at this point. I mean, I've seen a number of 6.8 million. Talking to the state, they said they've seen numbers up to 7.5 million. So we don't even know the precise number, and we don't know the ground rules for utilization of those funds. So at this moment, it's not in there. At such time as it takes a more definitive shape, that certainly would be a budget amendment.
Okay, so we're bringing in somewhere throughout the year via budget amendment, probably the first one of.
Again, as soon as the ground rules for that program are better understood, including dollar amount, we would come back with a list of recommended priorities for your approval, and it'd go from there.
Okay, I just wanted to acknowledge that those funds are not included in this budget as of yet. And
not at all.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments?
Not a comment, but a question.
Commissioner Taylor.
You will give us a copy of this, right?
I'm sorry, say again, please.
I think the mayor asked, you're going to provide us a copy?
I certainly will. I'll make sure that's distributed, and I apologize. That one slide went, who knows where.
All right, thank you.
All right. I have quite a few concerns with this budget. And I want to preface this with the fact that back in 2016, when I first got on this dais, and I think the only person on this dais was here at that time. This is during a time when we actually first got into a financial oversight board. FPI rated our city. We had a lot of programs cut, salaries cut, and it was a huge impact to our employees, our ability to do events in the city, and our ability to have basic things to do our job here as a commission. And it was very eye-opening to see the level of engagement and also the power of the oversight board over us as a city at that time. And as mayor, one of the things that I've committed to doing is to be focused on our major challenge, 4 major challenges. Number 1 being our finances. So I take these finances, 2 being our water billing, 2nd, our flooding and Durham moratorium, and 4, our roads and streets. And this budget conversation is at the very heart of all of those things, because this budget determines how we will move as a city in addressing those challenges and getting out of this financial oversight. And in the documents that govern the agreement between us as a city and also the state, it is very clear about what will happen if we fail to comply. That we must, as a city, must notify the government immediately if we are to violate any terms of that agreement. And failure of that will come on us as elected officials. And we can be put with malfeasance, misfeasance, and neglect of duty because of that. So I'm very careful about making sure that we do what we need to do so that we comply with the terms of the Financial Oversight Board. So I want to just ask a series of questions just to make sure that we are in alignment with this, because one of the fundamental aspects is two real fundamental aspects to that agreement is approving our annual budget and our 5-year recovery plan. It's among a few other things, but those two are the fundamentals. And with that, so my first question is, does this budget align with the 5-year recovery plan budgets that we submitted last year in our 5-year recovery plan?
It is, response to that would be, it is, in some ways, it is more, it's certainly ahead in terms of funding revenues than what was in the 5-year plan. It is, but conversely, the staffing is up a little bit over what was in the 5-year plan.
So is that a yes or no?
It's multiple answers to it. Certainly from a fund balance position, it is in much better shape than what was in the 5-year plan.
Is that a yes or no?
I would say from a fund balance point perspective, it's much healthier. Yes, sir. Fund balance certainly was not going to be plus $6 million at the end of this current fiscal year.
Okay. A part of the documents, it says that the components of our financial recovery plan and annual budget must include a few things. Number one is a timetable for the elimination of all outstanding deficits in all funds. Is that included in this budget?
In essence, it's all outstanding, say that again, deficits in funds.
So on
Yeah.
section 3,
Yeah.
B, it says a timetable for the elimination of all outstanding deficits in all funds shall be included.
Yes, sir.
Is that within this budget?
The deficits for, I'm going to talk to your primary funds, your general fund, you are already, you've eliminated the deficit. That's not a question. Stormwater, you are in a position to, you are currently far in excess of any deficit in that fund. You're going to use it for the moment, as I have discussed previously. By FY23, you're going to be back again in very positive territory for the stormwater fund. The water sewer fund has been a problem from the first budget workshop. And I have made recommendations as what we can do to fix it, but at the moment, it does not look like a healthy fund in the budget. And we do not have an immediate action plan to square it away. There's recommendations that'll take care of it, but they have to be put in place before that occurs.
Okay, so we do have a deficit and we do not have a plan, a timetable
You
in
have
this
a
budget.
deficit, the water sewer fund, and yes, it is going to require action. At the moment, there's no timetable.
Okay. C says the current expenditures and current revenues shall be balanced for each fiscal year. Are the current expenditures and current revenues balanced for this in this budget this year?
Yes, sir. That's what you saw with the general fund. It's equally, well, I'm sorry, it's not true within the water sewer fund. It is true for stormwater funds, certainly.
Says our enterprise funds for the city shall be operated according to commonly accepted business practices, and all operating revenues shall be sufficient to cover all costs of operation, including depreciation. Is that within this budget?
Depreciation is not appropriate for this purpose, but again, you've got two enterprise funds. You've got a water sewer fund and you've got a stormwater fund. Water sewer fund, as discussed, is problematic. Stormwater fund is very healthy.
Is that a yes or no?
I've got to separate between the two enterprise funds. One yes, one no.
It said, in section I, it says efforts to collect debts and revenues owed to the city shall be improved. How is debts and revenues improved? The collection of debts and revenues improved in this budget?
That's being addressed by the function that actually is trying to collect those past delinquencies. His recommendation for 2 additional staff to accomplish just that.
Okay.
And again, just as a sidebar, the collections, because of the pandemic and because we have agreed with the county that we would not turn off customers during the heart of the pandemic. Collections have suffered, but now that's on the road to recovery again.
It says a capital improvement plan for the city shall be developed and updated annually. Is that part of this budget?
Only at the first year at the moment. It's pending such things as the presentation you had tonight, where there will be a stormwater plan, and that will populate a 5-year plan. You do have a 1-year plan in there right now, not a 5-year plan.
So I pointed out these items in this budget because literally we are put forth to approve this budget as a commission. And based upon this agreement, it literally says that we must abide by this. And based upon the answers that I hear today, it is not clear that we're abiding by this agreement for financial oversight. The other thing that I want to touch on is you mentioned that we can, I guess, make changes after submitted to the Financial Oversight Board. Since I've been on this dais, I have not seen that happen before. We would submit our budget and they make the changes and that's the final, and we got to approve what they submit to us. Has that changed for this year, where after we submit this budget approved tonight and they make the changes, can we make any additional changes?
Every conversation I've had with the state, they've made it very clear. We will submit a budget by the 1st of August. They will review it, come back with their comments and direction as appropriate. They said, if you change it further, then you're just going to have to resubmit it. I mean, I don't know what the old I don't know that the old rules were documented. It may have been practiced, but certainly every conversation I've had with the state says, you know, it's coming back to you if you need to make changes, you know, above and beyond what the state might recommend. That's fine. You just turn around and resubmit it back to the state again.
And they have another 20 days to, so we submit the budget, they make their changes. If we want to make any additional change, because we've been hearing that we could make more changes. So right now we're in a position where we will resubmit again after they make their changes, because we want additional changes outlined.
Yes, sir. And I think twofold, and I'm making a guess on it. To the extent changes are made, to the extent they have reviewed the entire budget, they'll be able to focus on whatever changes are made. And in particular, if the changes are such that they actually lower the expenditures, I think it's going to be an expedited review to get it back very quickly rather than 20 business days.
Okay. All right. So now that we got the Financial Oversight Board out the way, I want to address our 4 major challenges and be clear about how this budget tackles those things. First is our finance. How does this budget address our outstanding debts and making sure that all of our debts are paid within 5 years?
May not be, I've got to think 5 years, because just, and maybe I'm nitpicking, for example, the debt that the county is considering to add to the debt we're paying right now, i.e. the other $2.5 million that would be for the meter installation and so forth. That their assumption, their statement is that would start in the middle of next year or January of next year. So by definition, that's going to be slightly beyond the 5-year period. The debt that we're currently paying to the county, that would be within the budget. Certainly, although it's not a multi-year budget, the assumption is we will continue to do the 1.2 million payments each year. And in fact, that would be paid off another 3.5 years, plus or minus a month or two. In terms of the debt associated with the building, 70 Fisherman Street, there has to be a balloon payment in FY 26. So that's not quite within the 5 year, well, that's now becomes in the 5-year window. So there will be a balloon payment at the moment in the range of $3 million, which will either be paid off at that point or possibly be refinanced. The debt that has not been addressed is the portion of monies that were held by the city for the red light camera activity that were meant to go to the state up through 30 September 2019. That has been a negotiated thing that's been going back and forth. We talked about it briefly before. I know the status is at the moment, state has come back and said, you need to determine exactly what it is that you owe us, and then we will figure out what to do about it. And parenthetically, we do not have the authority to outright waive it. So the sequence of events is the city has to make a determination of exactly how much is owed, then present that to the state, and there'll be discussions at that point as to how that be repaid. That has not been addressed in the budget at this point.
Okay. Another thing in finance department, we've been having serious challenges since I've been here on this day is about making sure we have a fully functional finance department. And one of the most common things that we've heard sitting on this commission is that our salaries aren't competitive, the workload, the audits, and those things. Is there any changes to the finance department salaries to address that issue?
In the budget at this point for a finance director, it's been increased to $125,000. That's deemed to be competitive at most places.
And that's for the finance director. Not anything else?
The other ones are not deemed to be uncompetitive that I'm aware of, but certainly the finance director position was elevated.
Okay. Is there anything in this budget to increase our ability to get those people recruited in our city to address these finances?
Well, in parallel, you do have an RFP out there right now looking for firms who would, I'm sorry, let me restate that, to actually outsource the department. And I did talk to another firm who might be interested, and they were also forwarded the information earlier this week.
Okay. I want to go on to our next major challenge of water billing. What is allocated in terms of the water staff? I know you mentioned collections and you'll have more people, so I think that's important that we do that. Another thing that is a challenge is the water rates. And since being on this day, it's one of the most common things we've heard is that we need to do a water rate study, which can take quite a bit of time to be able to analyze our production and try and reduce those water rates. Is that within this budget, the water rate study?
No, sir, it's not. And to be very blunt about it, with the particular financial problems being encountered by your water sewer fund at this point, if you were to end up actually reducing your rates, it would just exacerbate the problem. What I did do, which is a back of the envelope type analysis, I am familiar with operations of other utilities. I've compared our cost structures to their cost structures, and we really were not, we're in many respects favorable. We are not unfavorable. And again, just to circle back, primary problem with our water sewer fund at the moment, which would preclude possibly lowering rates later on, is the level of debt service. Okay. You've got your debt services at the moment looks to be roughly about 25% of revenue, which makes any flexibility just impossible at this point.
Okay. Moving on to our third major challenge. One of the things with the DERM, I like the fact that we have a stormwater plan that is in place. They say we're going to start on some projects, but another thing is this DERM moratorium that we have. And I know we just got fined for challenges in building license for DERM moratorium. Is there anything, what is in this budget to address the annual review of occupational licensing and those things to shore up our review of occupational licenses in alignment with our DERM moratorium?
I believe that's meant to be addressed by the change in leadership of that department.
Okay, so we're going to have an annual review and we have the staff capacity and the resources to do that annual review of occupational licensing and all that's in this budget.
I cannot attest to that. I was not aware of a requirement for an annual review nor the workload involved in that. So that's an open issue.
Okay. And then lastly, with the roads and streets, what are the major projects that we're anticipating this coming year for our roads and streets?
The roads and street budget has been somewhat minimized because they do not want to start to resurface and really bring roads up to grade, only to turn around and put stormwater in. So the amount of road that is built into this budget is probably about 1.5 miles.
Okay, all right. And I have 2 sections I want to go into further, and I apologize for all those. And this is very important. This is our budget, what we have to approve, send it up to the state. So this is important that we go through this. The second thing is commission priorities. Over the past few months, we've been talking about priorities for our commission to make sure that what we would like is moved forward. And we came up with 4 major priorities. The first one was beautification, and then another one I believe was HR. How is those things reflected within this budget?
Where you will see them is within each of the leading divisions. HR, for example, the first section within the HR section identifies all the things that are being undertaken to be responsive to that one. Within Public Works, in each of those divisions where we could align what we thought we need to do with commission priorities, that again is at the leading portion of that particular section. So I mean, there certainly is beautification dollars in there in several areas: tree trimming, lawn maintenance of lawns, improving entryway signs. Within HR, as I said, there's probably about 8 or 9 items listed there is trying to be responsive to what they deem to be the HR priorities. So what is not done is all of the beautification has not been pulled together in one place.
Okay, so is there a citywide deep cleaning as a part of this budget?
I have to think about that. Deep clean to the extent, well, I'm sorry, one thing that did come to mind I certainly should have addressed is with deep clean to the extent that you're doubling your resource in terms of people who will be on the road on a daily basis to pick up all the illegal dumping that's occurring through the city. Deep cleaning, let me say, to me, that's not fully defined certainly in terms of cleaning up the litter. Yes, that's been addressed. In terms of trimming the trees so that they can be turned up back to the property owners for their maintenance, that's being addressed. Deep cleaning, painting some of the buildings, that's being addressed. Beyond that, deep cleaning, if I've missed categories, I would look to you to possibly explain what categories I've missed, and I can give you an answer as to whether that's included in the budget or not.
Is there funding to create a special taxing district, and what we need to do to create a special taxing district?
No, so that's not directly identified at this time.
Is there a what's this last one? I actually can't find the last one that's on there. All right. So I wanted to make sure we have this on record because it is uncommon for myself as a mayor to vote no on the annual budget. And these are the reasons why at this moment I cannot support this budget. We received this documentation for this budget last week, the day before a budget workshop. And even in this item right here, we don't have the budget laid out in this document so our public can see. I looked online, do not see it online. And there's a lot of unclarity that we're receiving as a commission as it relates to this budget. And I want to make sure that we are in alignment with our Financial Oversight Board. That agreement can literally take us out of office. And we need to be very careful about that. So I want to make sure that we're doing that. And based upon the responses tonight, we're still unclear. And we need to make sure that we are in alignment, we are addressing these challenges because we are in a financial oversight and we must move this city forward year after year. And this budget document is the plan, action plan for us to move this city forward, to address all of our major challenges and to get out of this financial oversight as soon as possible. So with the consideration of us being over budget by 5.6 million, using our fund balances while we're in a financial crisis to take care of that, while having one of the highest millage rates. We can cut services. We didn't have to spend so much. We could probably drop our millage rate even further if we're not spending so much money within this budget, and also pay back our debts so that we can get out of this financial crisis. And this budget doesn't address those things. So those are my concerns that relates to this, and those are my thoughts on this item. Any other further discussion before we vote? All right.
Mr. Mayor,
Vice Mayor.
thank you for your detailed questions. I think where I'm just a tad bit confused is some of the questions that were asked tonight to Mr. Anathan seem more related to specific department directors that needed to answer those questions. It almost felt as if are we expecting Mr. Anathan to know the answer to what a deep cleaning is, or street deep cleaning, or are we expecting Mr. Anathan to know or answer questions related to the budget? And so some of the questions felt a little, I got you, but that's neither here nor there. I just want to make sure if some of those specific questions, if those are specifically related to departments or towards the city manager's office, then I would like for us to be clear to have those those questions answered through the manager's office or through, if the mayor had those questions, I'm not saying answer them tonight, but I don't want you, Mr. Annington, to feel as if you must know the answer unless I'm incorrect. Help me know. Are you supposed to know the answer to all the questions that were asked of you tonight?
To do my job correctly, yes, ma'am, I should. I will be the first to tell you the Public Works Director would have probably given some crisper answers than I did, but I should know those answers.
Okay, so you should know everything that a deep cleaning of a street entails.
That has always been an enigma to me, that particular term. That one, I have to confess, I never asked to find out exactly what that meant.
Okay, so I'm just, trying to differentiate between what you are supposed to know and be able to answer, because I would not want us to make a judgment based on answers given that you may not even know the full spectrum of why that particular department put those line items on there. They may know the targeted answers, specific answers for those questions. So I just want to be clear. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. May I put something in perspective just because I'd like to do it? Last year, you had a budget early. It was done on schedule, and you had a chance to look at the details. And you had an operational audit going on this year, which just creamed the schedule. It was certainly not my intention to get this document to you 10 days ago. But by the time I stepped back from the operational audit, I was about 3 months behind on my schedule. So there is a reason for it. I apologize for it. It's certainly not the type of work that I like to do or any of the department heads who participated in the budget. But because of that operational audit, our schedule was just blown out of the water. So that's unfortunately why you got it as late as you did.
Ms. Annandale, we see your work, and your work here in this city has outshined any financial documents I personally have ever received since sitting on this dais. So your work and what you have put in, what you put together in front of us is unquestioned in regards to that. These questions are very clear about, and you are one person. We work as a department, as a team, the whole management, the whole departments to do this work. So it's nothing on you personally and your work at all. But these are questions that we have brought up in prior meetings in regards to our workshops that I've spoken about in terms of financial oversight board. But today we're making the decision. And that decision is going to send this budget out. And we got to be very clear about the decision that we're making. So I want to make sure while I'm sitting on this dais, that's it. My number one goal is to make sure that we are clear and in alignment with our financial oversight and that we are getting out of this financial oversight and addressing our major challenges. So these are things that need to be brought to light so that we can move forward as a city. Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Taylor.
Okay. To the manager, or Mr. Anderson, I know we were referencing the contract between the state and the city, but tell me if I'm wrong. This budget, even though we're in contract with the state, right? And we said to get out of oversight, this is what we need to do. We have to maintain a certain level of what's in that contract, basically. This budget is going to the state for the state's approval, right?
It's essentially first pass approval and comments.
So-
They could well come back and say, you need to make the following adjustments.
So in other words, we can pass it tonight, and if the state has an issue with it, they'll let us know, correct?
Yes, sir, they certainly will.
Okay, that's all I wanted clarity on, because I know there was references made on we can be put out of office if we don't follow the state's mandates based on that contract. But if the state approves this budget, that's the right way to go.
That would be the first test. And yet again, if you're still not comfortable with the budget, you do have the option in September to say, okay, even though the state approved it, we think we can do a little bit better, and you'll make whatever adjustments you deem appropriate.
Got it.
Commissioner
Thank
Davis.
you. Mr. Anathan, in September, once we receive the feedback from the state regarding the budget and any items that needs to be changed, at that point in September, will we be able to change line items, or is it just specific to values, like up and down on values, or both?
You have the right to change any line item you want, except the millage rate. You don't want to go there, because if you try to raise that, it's going to be expensive. You can certainly lower it, but short of that, any line item in the budget is free fire zone. You can have at it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So we can make these changes, just have to be, we have to resubmit it to the state and delay. So in previous years, we've had to pass a budget every month because there was a delay in submitting the budget and getting approved by the state. So that's why it's important for us to submit a full budget like we did last year. One time was the first time we did that. And there wasn't, I don't think if there was any changes at all or no comments at that time. So that was the first time. But in prior years, we've had to, they had changes, we had to come back, make changes, and we had to resend it back up to the state. So those are the challenges to make sure that we approve this budget. So we can make all these changes, as I said, but it just has to be approved by the state.
Yes, sir.
All right. Any other questions or comments on the budget? All right. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Taylor,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Mayor Pygott.
No.
Motion passes 3-1.
All right. Thank you. Moving on to item
13.9.
Yeah, 13.9. Thank you.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Opa-locka, Florida, authorizing the city manager to accept grant funding from the State of Florida Department of Economic Opportunity, DEO, and execute corresponding agreement HL 136 attached here too, providing for incorporation of recitals, providing for an effective date. This is sponsored by the city manager.
We have a motion?
Move it.
Moved by Commissioner Taylor,
Second.
second by Vice Mayor Williams. Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Manager, you want to introduce this item?
I hear you, sir.
Introduce this item?
Oh, yes, no problem, sir. This is, I'm gonna go ahead and handle this one. So I'm going ahead and, this is, the monies that were given to us by Representative James Bush for the Parks Department. They handle with the fencing, am I correct? And therefore, we ask that this money be received and accepted by the city so that we can utilize it for that purpose.
Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr.
Commissioner
Mayor.
Davis.
The reason I pulled the item was to formally acknowledge Representative Bush and his contribution to our parks. This grant opportunity is well received and much needed in our community as we work diligently to bring our parks up to speed. One park in particular, the Kaboom Park down in Magnolia North, which is a park that I've had the opportunity to work intimately with in developing. That park would also be receiving fencing and hopefully that'll help us bring some control over the park, enforce hours and curb some of the illegal activity that has been going on. So the reason I put the item was just to formally acknowledge Representative Bush and to thank him for his contributions to the Kaboom Park in Magnolia North, as well as Siegel Park and Helen Miller and Shabundi as well. So thank you, Representative Bush. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions on this item?
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Taylor?
I just want to echo the sentiments of my colleague and say also thank you to Representative Bush for thinking about the city and getting us this grant.
All right. I want to echo the sentiments. We thank Representative Bush and all those up in Tallahassee that helped to make sure that this funding is here for the city. And want to invite everyone on Friday at 1 o'clock where we do our groundbreaking for actual police station, which is a little different, but same with the funding that Representative Bush helped to secure along with others up there. So thank you very much for that. Any other comments or questions? All right. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Vice Mayor Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor,
Yes.
Mayor Pigott.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
15A1.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Opa-locka, Florida, approving the final site plan request for the construction and operation of a residential mixed-use building located at 2050 Alibaba Avenue, identified by folios 08-2122-003-2140, 08-2122-003-2150, 08-2122-003-2160, providing for incorporation of recitals, providing for an effective date. This is sponsored by the city manager and was deferred from the July 14th regular commission meeting in 2021.
All right, this is a public hearing item. Public hearing is open. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Director, could you introduce the item?
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Gregory Gay, Director of Planning, Community Development, Building and Licensing. This is a project in the Magnolia North area for a mixed-use development, 8-story development built on a site that's approximately 12,500 square feet. This was presented before the Planning and Zoning Board as a development that will be approximately 30 units with 32 parking spaces. The Planning and Zoning Board offered their approval subject to some modifications related to the parking. And the developer has taken that opportunity to make some modifications to the site. Within your package, you should see a secondary set of plans that relate to the site. The building envelope remained the same. The modifications were more or less internal. And because of that, they went from a standard parking garage configuration to a automated parking facility with 66 parking spaces and 2 additional handicap parking spaces so that they would meet the minimum parking requirements relating to the number of units that are within the development. Initially, it was supposed to be a 30-unit development. They were able to add on an additional 8 units based on the going from a standard garage parking facility to a automated parking facility, which opened up some square footage within the building itself. Staff does recommend approval for the development of this project. We also have the complementary second item, which is the development agreement, which will also be spoken on as a part of this particular presentation. We do have the development team that's here represented by Robert Holland, Eddie Seymour, Sean Akins, and Nehemiah Davis. Mr. Holland is here to make a presentation, and if you have any questions or concerns, we'll address them at that time.
Public hearing is open.
Mr. Mayor, Honorable Board, Robert Holland with offices at 3250 Northeast First Avenue, Suite 334, Miami, Florida. I'm here with Mr. Sean Atkins. Mr. Atkins, if you can stand up. He's the owner of Faith Pleasing Plasny Corp., which is the owner of the property. And I have also Mr. Eddie Seymour with Flux Architects, who's the architect for the property. And then you have Mr. Nehemiah, who also is part of the development team. And as you can see, it is a composite of a team of folk who decided to try to come back as young professionals to invest in Opa-locka. I was not a part of the team of the last hearing, but I did get a chance to hear the comments that were raised by this board. And I want you to know, between your comments and the manager's insistence, we were able to hammer out quite a bit to try to hopefully get everybody comfortable with the development. As you know, living in the urban core, land values are very expensive. So people typically look to go more vertical now to try to be able to accommodate and make housing more affordable for folks to be able to live in a community. So this property is located at 2050 Alabama Avenue. Its current zoning is B1 with a corridor mixed-use overlay district, which allows heights up to 150 feet. This development is less than half of that. It allows density up to 150 units per acre. When you look at the size of this site, it would allow a density of 43 units of acre, 43 units for this particular site. We are not seeking that 43, we're only seeking the 38. And that unit mix kind of gives us the numbers to be able to justify some of the innovative things that are being done to make this development work. So the project, as you know, was deferred last time. But this project is being designed to lure young professionals back into Opa-locka. It is much more difficult for young professionals to be able to have the ability coming out of college and getting in their entry jobs to be able to afford homes. And the value of homes, as you know, right now have skyrocketed everywhere. And so you have to try to create these landing pads that kind of bring some synergy to bring young professionals back in, to want to create an employment base in the city, add professional conversation in the city, to get involved in the political apparatus of a city, to bring about the overall growth of a city. So this is an 8-story proposed development. As I mentioned, it's mixed use. It's speaking of 38 units, 19 2-bedroom, 19 3-bedroom, tenant only occupancy. So this won't be a situation where you can have a separate family living with you. Tenant only occupancy. It's approximately 500 square feet of retail space, down from the 2,500 square feet of space that was in the last proposal. Because of the 500 square feet of retail, which is a very small space, it'll be on the first floor. It'll be some sort of pedestrian traffic retail. You don't have as many parking requirements for that. We have increased from the 58 parking units before to 69 parking units, I think it is this time. And you have also the 3 off-street parking that is made available in the city that doesn't get calculated, but Obviously, that gets used more properly for the retail. It's high quality construction, impact windows, backup generators. There'll be an amenities family room. So in case of a hurricane, there'll be place where those families in that building can congregate and be able to eat, get newscasts. It'll have a separate generator for that room for air conditioning, eating ability, and everything else. As it relates to the electronic garage shelves, they also will have backup generators just in case there's a power outage. You'll still be able to get access to the vehicles. So when you think about it, they've kind of thought about a lot of the things that millennials will kind of want to come back into the community. So you have the parking system, you have the elevators also that will be on backup generators as well. The additional conditions, things that you have Wi-Fi connection for all of the units will be hardwired for Wi-Fi, but you'll also have a Wi-Fi, free Wi-Fi in the amenities room, what called the family gathering room or whatever. So even again, during hurricane abilities or instances, you'll have that ability to have access to information. They're looking at doing semi-annual social events for the tenants in the building. That could be health fairs, it could be political discussions, it could be lawyers coming in and talk about criminal justice system, all those things that kind of get people engaged in a building to be community oriented about what it is that's going on around them. And so this is more catered towards the young professionals, as I mentioned. Those events will have, light music and hors d'oeuvres or food or what have you, but it'll be the ability for people to be able to talk about common issues in the community. We think when you see the plans, and I'm going to bring the architect up for this, you'll see it is something different than what you've seen in the past. And when you look at some of the parking issues that you've had, this might inspire some of those other developments to start thinking out of the box. Some people may not always understand that, but I've always kind of challenged clients and friends and family. Don't always do things one way. Start trying to push the envelope. How can you do it differently? And when you do things differently, you oftentimes encourage people to come in and be willing to give a little extra back to a community. And I think the way that we've looked at trying to design this and work this together, it really is about trying to build a collection of young professionals and make them more community oriented in their living abilities. And obviously they won't be there forever. And so that's one of the things that we're looking at doing. So the other thing that we talked about doing, and we can do this ultimately in a covenant with the city, it depends on the preference, but this is what the owner has already kind of agreed to. He agrees to make sure the facility is painted no less than every 10 years. So you don't have to worry about the place looking bad over time. As you know, sometimes people build things and they go in beautiful, and 10, 15 years later, you say, what the heck happened to that building? So it'll be painted no less than every 10 years. They agree to make sure the property is free of graffiti and derelict waste at all times. And they'll have a cure period that they have to get that done. And if they don't get it done within that cure period, they'll pay a fine. They agree to make sure there's no derelict vehicles or vehicle repairs on the property. They'll also make sure that all the tenants shall abide by the prevailing background check system employed by the Miami-Dade County Housing for initial and renewal terms. However, they do want to be able to create a community relations board that will be charged with the duties and responsibilities to set up a tenant review and selection committee. This committee will carry out the duties of viewing potential tenant applications with criminal background checks. It's so difficult for people to say, well, if somebody has a criminal record, we don't want to give them the ability to move somewhere. But sometimes those criminal records may have been 10, 15, 20 years before. So we think by creating this selection committee that'll be made up of the homeowners there, as well as maybe some community stakeholders that can be worked out with the city, that they'll go through a selection process that those folk can be vetted before they're given tenancy in the facility. We'll also integrate a real-time camera system in place outside. So if the police department needs to see that information at any point, you can see what's going on around this facility and up and down the street at your leisure. But we'll be able to be recording that stuff to make sure that we're making a safe environment for the tenants that are there and for the people that are in the area. And we'll make that information accessible to the city of Opa-locka's police force at any point. And if you get a real-time camera system like the city of Miami Gardens that feeds directly daily will automatically feed into your system if that happens as well. So with that, I want to turn over to the architect to kind of walk you through some of the renderings so you can get a feel for what this building looks like with the parking internal to the building versus all of the ramp stuff. And I can come back and answer any questions you have after that. I see the mayor trying to move me along, so I'm trying to. Good to see you.
So, all right.
Good evening. Thank you, Robert, for that great presentation. Eddie Seymour, architect of record, 1160 Northwest North River Drive, Miami, Florida. So if we can please bring up the presentation with the floor plans and renderings. There we go. Can you zoom in a little bit more? Thank you. So this is showing the first ground level. Can you scroll up just a bit so you can show the front yard? Thank you. So here we're showing the main entrance. As you can see on the left-hand side is where we have the parking lifts. We're representing 65 parking lifts, including 7 levels. That will include 11 slots on the ground floor, 2 of which would be open at all times to allow for the vehicles to shift. We are implementing 2 modules, which will increase the operating speed of the system, meaning that if your car is at the very highest level, the 7th level, it will take approximately about a minute, maybe a little bit longer for that car to be retrieved and for the user to operate that vehicle and take it out of the system. We also have actually this is, I'm noticing now this is the older floor plan. It's not the latest one that we sent you guys. But on the ground floor, where you're showing lobby and leasing, that would actually be the 500 square foot of retail. And all the other areas behind that would remain as they are. We're showing all of that in the latest floor plan that we submitted over a week ago. So I'm sure that you guys can review that at the appropriate time. But that was really the biggest change that we made to the front, making sure that we incorporated the retail on the ground floor instead of on the second floor where we had it before, and reducing that space to 500 square feet in order to meet all the other requirements that we needed for this project. If you can go to the last few pages, that should include some of the renderings as well. Even though this is actually go back up. That shows you the parking lift system. Yeah, there we go. If you can zoom out a little bit more so they can see the full section. So this here shows you the parking lift system. As I mentioned, it will be 7 levels, which would amount to a total of 65 parking lifts. The way this would operate is the user would approach an open slot within the system. They would have a digital kiosk within their own car, which will automatically trigger that system to drop down the safety gate so they can enter the system, exit the vehicle, and then once they press the button on the kiosk, in their digital key fob, the system would then lift the vehicle up into its proper slot. For visitor parking, obviously the visitors would not have a digital key within their vehicle. So that would be operated by the retail operator, which would give them access to that system through entering a number on the keypad in the system. And those vehicles would be parked at the very highest level for the commercial retail. For the residents, all the vehicles would be parked on the levels below that. If we can slide to the next one. And again, this is an older floor plan. This is no longer, like I said, we submitted over a week ago. So the latest floor plan shows you typical units on those plans, on those levels. If you can keep moving forward, this is more what those levels would look like. So on levels, from levels 3 to levels 5, we would have this condition, where on the left side, we have the opening for those parking lifts to operate. Obviously, we need a clearance of about 50 feet in order for that system to fit within the building. And on the right-hand side, you would then have the residential units with the internal circulation for the hallways. And then on the levels above that, if you can scroll down, you would have a full operating floor plate for the residential units. As Robert mentioned earlier, we have 19 residential units, 19 two-bedroom units and 19 three-bedroom units, ranging in size from about 750 square feet to some of the bigger units are over 1,300 square feet. Some of the three bedrooms are. And if you can keep scrolling. Is that the last page? Okay, so again, the package that we submitted had exterior renderings. If you guys were able to pull that up, I'll be more than happy to walk you through that.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions for the developers?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor?
My question, it was for Mr. Holland. Actually, 3 questions. Thank you all so much for presenting. Sometimes we don't get to see a face with the developer, so I do appreciate that. During the presentation, you mentioned that some of the tenants will be able to apply for affordable housing through a voucher system through the county. Is that Section 8 housing? That's what you mean?
No, they will be applying, hopefully, if this is approved, they'll try to jump into the staging with the county for what they call gap financing.
Okay.
To bring the cost down of the house and to make it affordable for young professionals or folk to get in. Whether it's Section 8 or not, I don't know if their aim for the 38 units is young professionals. You know, obviously, when you build this here, you're pushing for that. You hope the tenant selection committee gives you that. But that doesn't mean that absolutely everybody there ends up being a young professional. You might have somebody who qualified that got in through the county's program based on their requirements. But it depends on the funding source that they will get from the county. If they don't get the funding source from the county, then they'll just have to build it straight with their money, which is about a $12 million project.
Okay, so I'm saying potentially it could be.
Potentially any resident
Okay.
in any city could be Section 8.
Okay.
It's under the law.
Also, my next question, and I know you mentioned before about the parking, and that has been my concern. With the retail space, can you give me an example of what one retail could be within that retail, a hair salon or a
You probably
tax service or?
Yeah, it could be an office. Most time the retail would be something a little convenience store. Somebody's walking by and they want to buy something from a little convenience store.
So potentially and how many retail stores?
Only one 500 square foot box. It's a very small space.
And so that's always been my concern is the residents, because the parking only really kind of give each apartment about 2 spaces. And we always know that, I mean, you can look around in most cities, most homes, apartments, and everywhere else, there's always more than 2 cars. So are we saying potentially the retail space or whoever has the retail will then have to compete with the residents to park, and then if there's no parking there, they will inevitably park on the street?
Well, the residents all have a fob system that kind of dedicates them to their spaces.
So they get 1 space each, or?
They definitely will have 1 space each.
Okay.
And then there'll be probably some system on determining how they get the second space, it's based on the number of vehicles. But this won't be a situation where you have 3 vehicles for a place, for an apartment, and you think all 3 of those are going to be there. And so they'll make sure people know that well in advance on the lease that you're allowed this fob for that. And once the fob is used, you can't go back and use it for another space. That car is now designated with a space. The retail is so small that it's probably more foot traffic retail, which is why it's on the first floor. It wouldn't be something where there's major traffic coming in with a lot of vehicle traffic. It'll be more ancillary for the neighborhood, for people to come in, walk pedestrian style to use the store. And the last drawing had 2,500 square feet, which triggered a lot more parking, a lot more retail. This one has been reduced because of the concerns that you mentioned. down to just 500 square feet. So that was a way of trying to address that, and then adding the additional parking from, I think, 58 last time to about 67 or whatever. We heard your comments, and we were moving, trying to find a way to move
That's
this
always been
around.
my
Yeah.
concern. And I want to just put it on record again, because what we do here will inevitably follow us for years to come. And what was created on the 27th, 22nd Avenue corridor of Alabama, we're now the generation that has to deal with that and to clean it up and fix it. So what we decide becomes the next generation's problem to fix. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear on not creating future issues for those on the dais to clean up.
Yeah, that's why we didn't even ask for the variance this time, like they were asking last time, because of affordable housing, you get the variance on smaller parking. We heard your comments, so we got to figure out how we do this. Can we add another level of the parking in? When you add that other level of parking, you now had to have another system to work along with it, so it wouldn't, one system wouldn't run all 7 levels. So you had to double up on the system to keep the speed there, so people can come in and not have to wait forever to get their vehicles. So it pushed the project cost up, but we're trying to find a way innovatively to make it work, knowing this is the way city life is. City, you have to start thinking creatively to make these things work.
And thank you. And I saw the photos, and the building is beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right. We're voting on what's in the packet, correct?
Mayor and Commissioners, you're actually voting on the package with the supplemental plans that were provided to you, which is at the end of the portion of the package, which shows the site plan relating to these 38 units, along with the mechanical parking operational system with the retail on the ground floor. So that is the item that you're voting on. All of the other plans were basically provided for you as information relating to what the Planning and Zoning Board had initially approved, so that you will know there will be a record as to what was initially approved, the modifications that were made, and what is being presented before you this evening.
All right. I love the project that is presented in terms of creating a space for young professionals. That is something we definitely need. But looking at what we have before us, it differs from what was presented. And this is the challenge that I'm experiencing and we had last time. The resolution that we have says, whereas the development will be comprised of 30 residential units. Currently, what was proposed? The number of units.
If I could explain that, when the project was initially presented before the Planning and Zoning Board, we had a title that was created for that project at that time. Because it had gone before the Planning and Zoning Board, we could not make a modification to that title. But as the project has evolved between then and now, the information that has been provided for you basically is to address what has been presented.
All right. So the challenge is, if we pass this item today, this will restrict the project to 30 residential units and 32 parking spaces.
No, you can actually modify that through action, if you so choose, to basically amend the title to direct it as the 38 units with the 68 parking spaces.
So it's 38 units and how many parking spaces?
38 units and 68 parking spaces.
68?
Yes. The mechanized version has 66 parking spaces, and you have 2 handicap parking spaces. There is one more space that's indicated on the plans, but it wasn't indicated as an actual parking space. You could possibly take it up to 69. But it was identified with per plans that we received as 68 parking spaces.
And how much square footage for retail space?
516 square feet for the retail space on the ground floor.
Or is that an office space or retail space?
Retail space.
And how much for office space?
They have a rental office on the second floor. Since that is a part of the operations of the building itself, that does not necessarily require any additional parking for the leasing office.
So there's no office space in this. It's only 516 for retail, no office space.
Correct.
And what percentage of the units are for affordable housing?
This project is pretty much dedicated toward workforce housing, which is a new category of type of housing that is recognized by Miami-Dade County. So it's not necessarily being viewed as affordable housing.
Okay. So based upon what we have in front of us, there is a building height restriction. And this is supposed to be an 8-story building, correct?
That's correct.
And in this document that I have before me here, it says in order to go 8 stories, it must conform to one more of the following: affordable housing for 10% for very low income, 20% for low income, 50% for senior citizens, public space, or city's architecture.
As you would see with the elevations, the architect and the team have basically tried to address the architecture and basically replicate some of the Moorish architecture within their designs in order to reflect that it is a building that is within the Opa-locka community.
So this is in alignment with the overlay because it substantially contributes architecturally to the city Moorish architecture goals.
That's correct.
I think we'll have to figure out this amendment situation if we're going to pass this item to abide. This language needs to align. So we have to figure that part out.
Mr. Mayor,
Vice Mayor?
to the manager, I'm confused. This item has been deferred. If I'm not correct, twice, but I'm not sure. And we're still looking at the exact same resolution along with the wording of 30 residential units. I'm confused. Like, why can't we get this right?
Madam Vice Mayor, I'm going to refer that back to Mr. Gay in relationship to the issue that you have a concern about.
As I stated before, when this item was initially presented before the Planning and Zoning Board, it was presented as a 30-unit development with 32 parking spaces. That was the title that was created for this particular project. The Planning and Zoning Board did approve it, subject to the parking being addressed as a part of their condition for approval. We could not change the title between the Planning and Zoning Board and coming before the City Commission. The title needed to remain the same.
Mr. Mayor. This question is for Mr. Gay. So there was no other planning or zoning board as this item was deferred? It couldn't go back to the planning and zoning board?
That was not the intent of the process. And for this item to actually be taken back before the Planning and Zoning Board, which they did not recommend for it to come back to them. They recommended for the parking to be addressed. But if we were to take the project back before the Planning and Zoning Board, it would have had to be rescheduled and then come back to the City Commission, which would further delay the potential opportunities for finding the funding that they're seeking for the development.
Mr. Mayor?
Are you done, Vice Mayor?
I would like to hear from the city attorney. I don't want to keep deferring this item. I want to make a move on it, but I just would like to know which way we need to move as a board.
Madam Attorney?
Yes, Vice Mayor, through the mayor. If you have the documents in front of you that for the changes, we can help try to craft language. The issue is we don't have in front of us the document. I've looked at what Mr. Gay, I went down and took a look at what he's submitted. He told me, and we're happy to, craft any language that the commission is comfortable with and the applicant agrees to at this time, if that's the will of the commission.
Commissioner Taylor?
I'm on the same as my vice mayor is saying, because the language is reading one thing, but we're hearing another. So I guess I'd like that she referred it to the attorney to see what we can do in regards to this.
We can go through the document and add the necessary language. I'll need to get Mr. Gay's document, and
So is that something that we
we're
can
happy
do
to
tonight?
help do that now. I'm sorry?
Is that something that we can do tonight, or?
You can do that tonight, yes, sir. It may take a little longer, but we can do it.
Because this was deferred for the same reason that we're having right now. But the language what's being presented is not what we're seeing. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
If I may suggest, if we can have put together a substitute motion so that you could be able to address it from that particular perspective. And then with the changes of the number of units and the parking requirements. And then we will proffer that to you for your consideration.
What is that supplement motion?
Give me one moment.
The motion to call, how much time do you need, Mr. Gay? Do we call a recess? All right, motion to call a 5-minute recess to address this.
Second.
Do I have a motion?
Yes, I make a motion to recess 5
All right.
minutes.
Moved by Vice Mayor,
Second.
and second by Commissioner. Yes, Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Williams,
Yes.
Mayor Pygott.
Yes,
Motion passes 4-0.
this meeting is recessed for 5 minutes. We'll be back. Ready? I like to call this meeting back to order. I want to first, do we want to close out public hearing? Because I want to make sure that we do that before we move on to the discussion. Do we need to close out public hearing? Is that okay, Mr. Gay?
Yes.
All right, so public hearing is closed. All right, the floor is open for discussion. Colleagues, we have I believe, a supplement motion that we need to make.
Yes. Just to give further clarification, as it relates to this particular project, there is information that was within our staff report that basically spoke to the information on the height of the building itself being at six stories. But if you were to do affordable housing or some type of development that will work toward the design of the architecture of the building itself, that you would get development bonuses that would take it up to 8 stories. One thing that you would realize as a part of this particular development, the site is very restricted. And because of the innovative way they're looking at utilizing the site, that lends itself to being a taller building. If you were to look at it from the standpoint of whether you were doing a small garden apartment building or something like that, you would not get the same level of volume and being able to do the type of innovative parking on this site that they're doing as a part of this proposal. Thus, going from 6 stories to 8 stories gives that opportunity to, by increasing the height in order to placing the parking opportunity in the interior of the building itself. So that should address one of those particular concerns. So that's why, and actually it's within our code as we reevaluated it, you are entitled to go up to 8 stories for this particular zoning district. It is zoned B1, but it does have the mixed use overlay. And as a part of the mixed use overlay, it gives you that opportunity to increase the height for the additional 2 stories. That's for making it an 8-story building. As it relates to the way the resolution has been printed, we would like to recommend some modifications to the third whereas, where it says, whereas the development will comprise of 38 units instead of 30 units, 962 square feet of, and actually it's 962 square feet of, I'm sorry, 516 square feet of retail space, 962 square feet of leasing office, and 68 parking spaces. And that parking spaces are comprised of the 66 automated parking spaces and 2 handicapped parking spaces. The project is intended to address the following elements of both the unique of the site and the general to the city of Opa-locka, revitalization, architecture, public space, and the affordability, totaling a total of 66,116 square feet. And taking out the area where it speaks to the surface parking is through an automated parking operation of 66 parking spaces, and no reduction in parking is being requested. Those are the modifications that we're suggesting as a part of the resolution.
Based upon our code, it says that we're supposed to have 1.5 parking per 2-bedroom unit, 2 parking spaces per 3-bedroom units, and 1 parking space per 500 square feet. Based upon this 38 units and the 68, does that comply with those requirements?
Yes, it does.
How many two bedrooms are we having?
19.
And 3 bedrooms?
19.
Okay. All right. All right. Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Davis.
Thank you. For the record, what is the parking requirement for the commercial aspect of the project? The official number of parking spaces?
Based on the code, it's 1 parking space for every 500 square feet.
So given that the retail space is just at 516 square feet. The requirement is 1.
Correct.
Okay. And if that was say doubled to 916, what would that requirement be?
2 parking spaces
So it's per 500?
per 500
Okay.
square feet.
All right, thank you, Mr. Good.
Any other questions or comment? All right. For this motion, what has to be made, Madam Attorney, could you guide me on how we need to lay out this motion to make this amendment?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the motion would be made accepting the director's changes and adjustments to the resolution. And if you do that, you'll be just fine.
Does anyone want to make that motion?
I'll move it, Mr. Mayor.
Moved by Commissioner Davis,
Second.
second by Commissioner Taylor. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Williams,
Yes.
Mayor Pike.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Right. If anyone hasn't realized by now, I'm very concerned about last minute changes and making sure things are on point. And I cannot support items that do not have those things together. If it is something in the future, I'm all for it as long as our ducks in alignment. But this last minute is the reason why I'm very, very hesitant. Being on this dais in the past, I've had a lot of things come before us that we've had to do a lot of changes and rectifying, and I'm uncomfortable with that. So that is the only reason why I'm voting no on this item. But I would love to see something like this come before. Hope it does move forward, but that's my hesitation with this. All right, so hearing no further comments or questions, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Taylor,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Mayor Pike.
No.
Motion passes.
All right, moving on to item 13A2.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Opa-locka, Florida, approving a development agreement for the construction and operation of a residential mixed-use building located at 2050 Alibaba Avenue, identified by folios 08-2122-003-2140, 08-2122-003-2150, and 08-2122-003-2160, providing for incorporation of recitals, providing for an effective date. This is sponsored by the city manager and was deferred from the July 14th, 2021 regular commission meeting.
All right, this is a planning and zoning item, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Gay will speak on this item.
Mayor, members of the commission, this is for the Alibaba Apartments as described, the address being 2050 Alibaba Avenue. This is related to the development agreement. Regarding the development agreement, the language was modified to meet the changes that were made as far as the project itself. And within the final site plan for the Alibaba Apartments, it speaks to it being a mixed-use, 8-story multifamily building with a total of 68 parking spaces, plus 5 spaces for bike storage and 38 residential units made up of 19 2-bedrooms and 19 3-bedrooms. The language within the development agreement was modified to those particular modifications to address those changes. And it's reflected in the on page 1 437 in sections I and in sections section L and section S and section T on page 437. I would like to point out also that within the development agreement as our standard language on page 439, under section I, the compliance for utilizing the employment of Opa-locka residents or encouraging the employment of local Opa-locka residents through a career source or other systems to be determined, and basically encourage the hiring of local residents to be a part of the project. Those are some of the points that we would like to have considered. This was presented before the Planning and Zoning Board. The Planning and Zoning Board recommended approval, and our staff recommends approval as well. And we will basically be addressing the resolution in the same format, whereas the development will, on the third whereas the development will be comprised of 38 residential units, 516 square feet of retail space, 516 square feet leasing office, and 68 parking spaces. And the project will be intended to address the following elements, both in unique to the site and general to the city of Opa-locka: revitalization, architecture, public art, affordability totaling 66,116 square feet, with the automated parking to comprise of 66 parking spaces and 2 handicap, and no reduction in parking is being requested. Those are the modifications that will be a part of the resolution. If you have any questions for staff, or if you have any questions for the development team, we will address them at this time.
Public hearing is open. Public hearing is closed. Do I have a motion?
Move it.
Moved by Vice Mayor Williams,
Second.
second by Commissioner Taylor. Is there any questions for manager or zoning director? All right, Madam Clerk, roll call. Oh, hold up. I'm sorry. Could you read into the record the motion we need to make to make sure this resolution aligns with the previous resolution?
Yes, as a part of the resolution, within the third whereas, the development will be comprised of 38 residential units, 516 square feet of retail space, 516 square feet of leasing office, and 68 parking spaces. The project intends to address the following elements, both unique to the site and in general to the city of Opa-locka: revitalization, architecture, public art, and the affordability, totaling 66,116 square feet, with an automated parking operation of 66 spaces and 2 handicap spaces. No reduction in parking is to be requested. Those are the modifications.
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Davis?
thank you. I know that was language in the site plan, I believe in that item that discussed the what is it, the architectural requirement to increase the density of the project. Is that language also included in this agreement?
The language is not directly reflected within the agreement, but based on the information provided by the site plan does encourage that opportunity to take place. But if you would like to modify the development agreement to include the Moorish architecture as being a part of it, that can be included.
Yes, just as a matter, I mean, maybe the attorney could chime in, but just as a matter of, I guess, accountability, because if it's not an agreement, although it's outlined in our code, I don't know what really holds them to it outside of that if it's not included in. So I don't know if a representative for the project will be amenable to amending the item to include that information.
Yes, Commissioner, would be willing to accept that condition as part of the development agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have a motion to make that amendment?
Does does he want the language or should I provide the language? The attorney maybe can help.
If,
All right, we're, Commissioner Davis is asking for the language to make the amendment that was proposed so that a motion can be made. We need 2 motions right now to be made for this item to move forward. Commissioner Davis is asking for the language on the amendment that was just agreed upon by the developers.
I would like to suggest within the development agreement under item L, under the final site plan, where it describes the project itself to be approved by resolution for a multifamily mixed-use 8-story structure totaling 68 parking spaces and 5 storage for bike racks, and the 38 residential units, and describing the units, that we would place a clause behind that the architecture would be of Moorish design.
And so do you have a motion to accept the changes as the director stated to section L of the agreement? Yes, I'm asking if you have a motion.
Yeah, I'll make the motion, Mr. Mayor.
All right, so moved by Commissioner Davis.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Taylor. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Williams,
Yes.
Mayor Pygott.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
I think does he got to restate the earlier motion to the whereas, or do I just, as he state, kind of refer back to those statements?
I believe that he put them in the document. We can make the changes to the whereas to align with the representation.
All right, so do I have a motion to accept the director's changes to section 3 whereas? As stated by the Planning Community Development Director.
Move it.
Moved by Commissioner Davis. Second by Commissioner Taylor. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Williams,
Yes.
Mayor Pygott.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Any other discussion on this item?
Thank you.
All right, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Vice Mayor Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor,
Yes.
Mayor Pygott.
No.
Motion passes 3-1.
Second reading ordinance, 16B1.
An ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Opa-locka, Florida, authorizing the city manager to execute a lease agreement with SFSE LLC to occupy space at 780 Fisherman Street, providing for adoption of representations, providing for conflict and repealer, providing for severability, providing for scrivener's errors, conflicts of law, and providing for an effective date. First reading was on July 14th, 2021. This is sponsored by the city manager.
Public hearing is open. Public hearing is closed. Do I have a motion?
Move it.
Moved by Commissioner Taylor,
Second.
second by Commissioner Davis. Any discussion on this item?
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Manager, could you introduce this item?
Yes.
Could you introduce this item?
Oh, sorry, sir. This is a second reading of a ordinance dealing with the property on Fishman Street and the lease agreement between us and the school that's trying to purchase some more leasing space from us.
Floor is open for discussion.
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Davis.
Thank you. I just wanted to note one specific term of the lease agreement. As you know, during the first reading of the item, most of the discussion was centered around the tax penalty that was ultimately realized by the city due to a for-profit entity operating in our Town Center 1 building. That penalty totaled $160,000, of which we as a city received $60,000 of our share of that tax benefit. However, the remaining $100,000 balance, in my opinion, should be realized before we move forward. The potential is also there for the penalty to exist in tax years if we, don't move as a city to establish condominiums where we could really segment, taxes and that penalty for having a for-profit entity. But it is located in the contract between the first and second reading under 1.19 on page 456, where the tenant will be responsible for paying property taxes to the city in an amount not to exceed $160,000, or pay the property taxes on its condominium unit, so whichever is greater. And I was told, even though the penalty currently is only at $100,000, that they left the threshold up to $160 to give some flexibility to the number in future years if no action is taken and we end up paying a penalty going forward. So I just wanted to make note that it is included in the lease agreement, and that although the manager's recommendation was not to penalize the entity, it is going forward. The entity isn't agreeing to pay their portion of the tax benefit, which is the $100,000 that the city is currently on the hook for. So with that, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all I have.
Any other discussion on the item? All right, recorded my thoughts during the last meeting. So, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Taylor,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Mayor Pygott.
No.
Motion passes 3-1.
Mr. Manager, your report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Earlier today, we were able to send out a report to all the commissioners. I don't know if you had a chance to read it, but if you did, I'm willing to receive any questions that you may have pertaining to that report. If not, you can provide it with me later and we can respond to those questions you may have at a later date.
Any questions for the manager? Mr. Manager, I would like for us to incorporate reports to the public on the 4 major challenges. When speaking to the Financial Oversight Board, one of the things that they told me years ago is that we need to discuss our finances as a commission. And during this time, during the city manager's report, is that time for us to do so. We used to have it on the agenda for the city manager to discuss the Financial Oversight Board and the 4 major challenges. But it is important that we do so. That's something that was specifically told to me by the Financial Oversight Board to make sure that we are getting reports and updating on our finances at least. But as a city, we do have challenges, and we need to make sure that we continue to update our public on how we're moving month to month on those. So I hope moving forward that we can get those reports out in public so that all those that are watching and see know that this commission is responsive, that the management is responsive in addressing our challenges, and those are clearly laid out and detailed in our meetings, so publicly. So I hope that that can be moved forward. Any other questions for the manager? All
Mr.
right.
Mayor, Mr. Mayor, I would like to say that you're correct. We will make sure that you get that information. And I would like to let the public know that on Friday at 9:30, that in Shabani Village, that we will have the Financial Oversight Board meeting here. And a lot of information and things that we've talked about on this DS over the last year should be explained and brought to our attention from the state's perspective on how the city is looking from their perspective, where we at as far as the 5-year recovery plan, as far as our financial status. So I would suggest and I would push all of our citizens and all of individuals that are interested in the city of Opa-locka to take opportunity to look at that event on Friday at 9:30. Thank you very much. Oh, and also there's one other thing too. At 1 o'clock on Friday, we will be having a shovel ceremony with the monies that was provided by the State Representative James Bush for our new police department. Thank you.
Any questions for the manager? Are there any official board reports?
No, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Are there any future agenda items? Hearing none. Any commission reports? Mayor, commission reports?
Yes, I'll be brief, Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor?
Just want to report that on August 14th, we will be having a book bag and school supply giveaway at Helen Miller Center. Before that, actually, the mayor and I will be hosting with the NAACP the Unity and Community event from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Shortly after that, from 12 to 2, would be our school supply book bag giveaway. And during that event, we will also be providing parents of the city of Opa-locka with uniform vouchers. And again, this is while supplies last, and you must be a resident of Opa-locka. And lastly, I just wanted to say one thing. If you've driven around Opa-locka, you've probably seen some flags that's been placed around. That's an initiative of mine called I Am Opa-locka. We'll be talking about I Am Opa-locka and the different branches that it's going to play within the city. But I wanted to just make sure I laid out that we as Opa-lockians embody pride and we walk with confidence on a daily basis. And it's because of this that I have developed the I Am Opa-locka campaign. This is going to be a platform for all of us to salute our residents, our employees, and our businesses. So I am so excited about what this campaign is going to do. It's also going to branch into a marketing and branding item as well. So be on the lookout. Thank you.
Any other reports? All right. Just to echo the Vice Mayor's sentiments, NAACP has been hosting unities in the communities all across Miami-Dade County with other cities to bring together the public and also our police department, our elected officials, to make sure that we are talking and being responsive to them. So we're happy to host that. And it's good to see the flags that are taking place and the sidewalks that are going to be moving forward. One thing I do just want to just say for the record and touch on, one of the things I did when I got elected, when I first got in 2016, is I was here to make sure I hold this city accountable. And I'm not, that's my MO, and that's what I'm going to do moving forward. When I became a mayor, the amount of work and information that comes to the mayor's office is exponentially more than any other office. There are a lot of documents, there are a lot of information, there are a lot of conversations and people that come to this office. And it is difficult to do my job and try and hold SAFE accountable, bring up these conversations when there's a lot of talk about this personal stuff. There's nothing personal about anything that I do. And it's just sad that it continues to be part of the conversation. It is sad it's continued to be a part of this conversation. When I got on this dais, the decorum on this dais was completely different than what we experience now. And I'm going to continue to make sure we have a very respectful dais that addresses our concerns, that has alignment with what the agreements that we have, and do the major hard work. So my focus is on the hard work and not really on a lot of the events and other different things. And I applaud those of my colleagues for taking the mantle for those other items. But when it comes to these major challenges, these requests that come in, I would definitely like to make sure that we, just as though I support everyone else and what they do, these items for the people that I'm here to represent needs also to move forward and to get their consideration and not be distracted by this personal thing that keeps coming up or image. So I just wanted to state that for the record, and let's just move on. All right, any official board appointments?
No, Mr. Mayor.
All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Moved by Commissioner Taylor,
Second.
second by Vice Mayor Williams. Everyone, have a good evening. Thank you for your time and patience this evening. Take care.